Good evening, everyone. This is Chris, the Hobbit fan editor, and I wanted to just do a bit of an update video, I guess, for you guys. So it has been 3 years since I first uploaded my original edit of The Hobbit All There and Back Again, which was basically taking the trilogy and condensing it into one film. And yeah, since then, I've had a few requests to do an updated video on it. So, 3 years is a long time, and I worked for a very, very long time on that original project. I think it was about roughly 8 years or so from beginning of the project to getting that video out. And I think I uploaded it, I think it was like December 22nd, maybe, of 2021. So, yeah, with 3 years, just over 3 years, which is insane. It's also been 10 years since the release of Peter Jackson's Battle of the Five Armies. And yeah, just over the years, people have been, messaging. There's been a lot of great feedback on my edit, which, thank you to everyone that has watched it and left your feedback. I take all feedback on board, positive and negative. And I guess when you're working on a project for that long, I guess you kind of have tunnel vision. It's good to send your project out to other people, because when you're just like fixated on an edit, you just get used to how things are. And then someone could watch it and go, oh, actually, that cut's not so great there. That visual effect isn't great. Stuff that you may not have picked up on yourself just because you've been editing it yourself for a very, very long time. And I guess since then, I don't really have much free time anymore. And unfortunately, editing, I've let it slide a little bit. It was one of my favorite hobbies. Hobbies change and different priorities in life and whatnot. However, it's the Christmas break. I've got 2 weeks off, which means I want to jump back into some editing. And I thought, what better time to jump back into the realm of Middle-earth and at least start work on an updated version of my edit of The Hobbit. So this is going to be a bit of a live stream. Well, obviously it's a bit of a live stream, but I'm going to be scrolling through bits of my edit and just really talking about some of the ideas that I've got for it and scenes that I'm probably going to end up removing or reworking. And even within just 3 years, technologies that are available now are incredible, mostly with AI, visual AI thing. And I'll actually show you a quick 6-second test of a shot that JX Editor has done for me, because we're really just playing around with like lots of AI ideas, and the application of that technology, whilst not great, and it's still pretty hit and miss at the moment, I think it is going to be a game changer. And I think it will be sufficient enough for what I want to try and do with this edit, with the few shots that I need. But in a few years' time, who knows what the possibilities of this are going to be. There's also AI voice synthesizers now. So I had to try and find voice actors to match the voices, or try and awkwardly cut pre-existing lines from characters in order to craft new sentences. Now there's AI software where you can literally just type in whatever you want, and it's all on like a voice algorithm, and it's actually pretty effective for the most part. Probably not for like massive paragraphs or anything like that, but for short little sentences here and there, it's actually really good. So even in 3 years, the technologies that are available now for fan editing, there's just so much more. And I want to try and use some of this stuff. So I do have the 6-second clip loaded. I'm going to show that a little bit later, or at least when we get to that point in the edit of where I want to do it. So really, what is going to be different with this update? Picture quality. I don't know why, but the original video files that I got, I think actually, like, watching the edit back, Battle of the Five Armies, that portion looks fine, but Desolation of Smaug in certain parts, and certainly Unexpected Journey, during the export, for some reason, especially in the dark sections of the edit, had just like really blotchy and pixelated, and kind of glitchy, and just really lacked that good solid picture quality throughout. And I don't know why it did that. Like when I was in the editing suite, when I was doing it originally, I didn't see any of that noise or grain or as I say, like pixelation on the darker sections of the film. I didn't see any of that. So yeah, I want to correct that. So getting better quality footage and also better quality audio. I was working with stereo last time, so just 2 audio channels. And if I wanted to change the music in a scene, what I'd have to do is I'd have to mute the track completely and reapply, adding new sound effects to kind of mask out the ones that I'd cancelled out, or I'd have to lower the volume of the actual film and sort of boost the audio on the new music track I wanted. Or I think I had Soundtrack Pro actually, and there was a way that you could kind of isolate the audio and the sound effects and the vocals from the actual track, but it was a bit tinny, it was a bit glitchy, and it was a bit hit and miss in some places. But with 5.1 audio, or even 7.1, you have 5 or indeed 7 audio channels that you can work with. And one of those audio channels, usually, not all the time, but most of the time, one of those audio channels is the music track that you can just pretty much delete that one audio track, and then you're left with just vocals and the sound effects from the film. So you could easily just place in your new music over the top and nothing changes. Dirty Sanchez says, streaming on Christmas. Mad lad. It's Christmas Eve technically, but I will be streaming tomorrow. I'll be with JX, 8 p.m. British time for the Skeleton Crew, because Disney Star Wars waits for no man, and we'll be doing our review as normal at 8 p.m. for that. So I'll be streaming on Christmas as well. Why not? I like hanging out with you guys, so it's fine. I wanted to get an update video on this. So yeah, without further ado, I think let's just start going through the edit. So really all it's going to be is just updated visuals, updated audio, some possible new scenes that I'm adding in there with AI, or taking out some of the actually, in hindsight, when I watched it back, incredibly ropey rotoscope shots that I had in my original version, which look terrible. Again, when you've been editing a project for 8 years and you've got that tunnel vision, it just starts to look normal. But, having 3 years away from it and watching bits of it back again, I'm like, oh, that looks terrible. So getting rid of those scenes, replacing some of those with AI if I can, or if I can't, just removing them entirely. Also, I'm completely working from the ground up with this. So all the footage has been loaded into the editing suite, ready to go. I haven't actually started proper work on this project just yet, but I will be either tomorrow or in a couple of days' time. I will be beginning work on it from frame 1, starting completely from fresh. So, but it is going to follow the blueprint of my previous edit. So let's go through it. Now, I want you guys to tell me at home if there's audio on this, because there shouldn't be audio on this. I know what copyright's like on YouTube, and Warner Brothers are quite cruel when it comes to copyright and copyright strikes and whatnot. So there won't be any audio. This is me just kind of updating you guys. So I'll probably pause it on a frame just so you guys have got a bit of visual reference. But if you do want to check out my edit as it stands currently, the older version from 3 years ago, you can find a link to that in the description down below. But I mean, this will be getting an update very, very soon. Okay, so the intro, the voiceover at the beginning. My edit opens with Ian Holm's voice from the beginning of the film saying, it's the same opening as the original film, basically. My dear Frodo, you asked me once if I had told you all there was to know about my adventures. And I don't know whether to change this line a little bit or find a different lead-in. My goal with this was to try and mirror the Galadriel voiceover from the beginning of the Fellowship, where it's just a black screen. You have the film logos first, then a black screen. You build the ambience, and then you have a voiceover that kicks in to set the scene. And one of my intentions with this edit was that I wanted you to be able to watch this on its own without having watched the Lord of the Rings films. The Hobbit is set 60 years before the Lord of the Rings. And although the films were made as a prequel to the Lord of the Rings films, I wanted this to be able to stand on its own. So when the first line uttered in the movie is "my dear Frodo," the audience is going to be like, who the fuck's Frodo? And Frodo doesn't appear in my edit until the epilogue as a real quick cameo. So I don't know whether to use that or whether to try and find a different line or work something else in, essentially just removing the name Frodo. I don't know if that's set in stone yet. I might leave it as it is, but still, I wasn't keen on that with my edit, that Frodo still gets a name check when he has no part in the story, essentially. And then we open with in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And then we have, I guess I can play this a little bit, just sort of like a lead into Bag End. I'm going to be really careful with this. I'm going to try and not let it play for more than 8 seconds. We lead into Bag End. The door opens. It's a very weird shot, though. It's actually from the DVD menu. The door opens almost like an automatic door. So it kind of is a bit of a meta scene. It's very much like the book, how J.R.R. Tolkien addresses the reader directly. And it's like, this is a hobbit hole. We're introducing you, like, come on in kind of thing. And I know it doesn't really fit the tone, maybe, having that kind of meta style to it with the door opening. So I might try and find an alternate shot, perhaps, of the interior of Bag End if I can, to remove this scene. But I do kind of like it, and in a weird way, it's one of the opening scenes of the film, is the door opening and welcoming you in. And if we jump all the way to the end of Return of the King, the final shot is the door closing. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but maybe that is kind of a nice little bookend, I suppose. Dirty Sanchez says, looking forward to your fan edit of Rings of Power, or you could make yourself life easy and discover Atlantis. Yeah, so someone actually did comment a couple of years ago about whether I'd take on an edit of the Rings of Power, and at this point I don't think it's even worth it. I think what I'll do is, if I ever do attempt to do one, is in many years time, when, if it hasn't been cancelled before then, or God forbid if they do make it to 5 seasons of Rings of Power, I'm just going to have a look at what I've got, and it's probably going to be a glorified clip show. That's going to be what my edit of War of the Rohirrim is going to be when that becomes available. I'll buy a copy of it, because with fan edits, I always think you should own in some way the film that you're editing, just to avoid any kind of weird gray area. So I'll probably have to buy War of the Rohirrim, but the edit I want to do for that is going to be relying a lot on AI. And it's pretty much going to be like a 5 or 10 minute clip show of the appendices, because there's nothing lore accurate that I can work with, really, with that film, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 scenes in it. So, yeah. Anyway, let's continue. So if I scrub forward, I'm pretty happy with this opener, like introducing us to Bilbo and a bit of the Shire life. We have a voiceover during this with Ian Holm as well. And I'm actually thinking about maybe trying to integrate more of Ian Holm's dialogue, if there is an AI voice that can effectively replicate Ian Holm, maybe using some more of the book lines. In the film, they say, this was a hobbit hole, and that means good food, a warm hearth, and all the comforts of home. Where in the book, it's just, this was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. And then there's lines like, not a dry, bare, sandy hole filled with worms and an oozy smell. There's things like that. If an AI works, maybe just quoting the entire book, not the entire book, but that entire opening, because it is so iconic to that book, that could be a potential way to open it. But I definitely want to try and preserve this opening voiceover with Bilbo. I did consider at one point, the technology wasn't there at the time. We get sort of old Bilbo's voiceover, which leads us into the story. And I did think about, would it be worth just getting rid of that completely? But I thought, well, no, because it's very much like the Galadriel prologue voiceover at the beginning. And then I did consider if there was a way of an edit of having Ian Holm's voice narrate the whole story and sort of fulfill Tolkien's role, as he does at some points in the book, where he talks directly to the reader. And I thought that could maybe be an interesting way to go about it. But then I thought, well, maybe that would outstay its welcome a little bit and perhaps not match the tone completely of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings film. So I kept it to just the intro. And indeed, that's the only voice over stuff that I had to work with, was from the intro from the original film. So I don't know. Maybe it's a version of an edit I could try, but I think that motif, I think that conceit of Ian Holm narrating the entire story would maybe get a little bit tiresome after a while. So I'll probably just keep it to the intro and let the film speak for itself. So honestly, like, this first part of the film, I really don't have a problem with in any way. In fact, like, even with the actual film itself, this is one of the strongest points for me. It's all very much akin to the book. The dwarves getting introduced one at a time, and then eventually as the entire group. Some of the shenanigans. I significantly cut Blunt the Knives down just to try and match the tone of the overall film. Unexpected Journey had this weird tonal shift throughout it, where it it was trying to do some of the more childlike stuff from the book, but then it was totally inconsistent with a lot of the more violent and darker elements to the story. So just trying to get that cohesive whole, not just with the Hobbit films in general, but also with the Lord of the Rings and it being a part of that story. Got a comment from Tobias that says, your edit is fantastic. Looking forward to seeing what changes you've made, dude. I really appreciate that. Well, as I said, I haven't officially started work on this. I have all the files in the editing suite ready to go, and I'm just ready to take that first plunge, that first step, that first cut, which is going to be this project. I'm hoping I'm not going to like give a deadline on myself on this because I have other stuff going on as well. Even that I've got 2 weeks off, I have other stuff going on as well. So I'll do as much as I can. But I think this project will easily be a lot quicker than my original project was, because the original project I was very much discovering it, and my ideas were changing over the course of 8 years. And then I was thinking, oh, maybe I could try that. Maybe I could change this. Now I have a blueprint. It's going to be almost identical to my current edit, but there's going to be scenes removed. And I think one of my goals as well is just to reduce the runtime a little bit, because the runtime on my edit is 5 hours and 7 minutes. That's almost an hour longer than the Return of the King Extended Edition. That's including credits as well, and there's about 15 minutes of credits, I think, with Hobbit films. So cutting that down, and just by removing scenes, that runtime is going to come down anyway. And I do wonder how much of the actual Battle of the Five Armies I want to keep in the movie. I toyed with loads of ideas when I was originally doing my film of having an edit where, much like the book, where Bilbo gets knocked out towards the beginning of the battle, and then we just wake up, and then he discovers that Thorin has killed Azog, who has been renamed to Bolg in my edit. Thorin's killed the head of the orcs, and Thorin falls down defeated and dies right afterwards. And these films have definitely boosted the importance of Thorin and his presence in the story. It's not so much from Bilbo's perspective, it is very much shared. And at some points, I would argue that an argument could be made that Thorin is the main protagonist of these films, certainly by the time you get to Desolation of Smaug and Battle of the Five Armies. But I don't know, with the film's context, it never felt right to do that. You've kind of bigged up this orc bad guy and had this whole battle, and then to have that final conflict resolved off screen. Stuff like that can work in the book, and the battles and that sort of revenge plot of Bolg and, Thorin and everything. It's never really fleshed out all that much in the book. And I just don't think it works in the film. I think having Bilbo just run off during the battle when he's been so courageous and so loyal to everyone, to just run off and runs up to Ravenhill by himself to get away from everyone, leaving Gandalf, leaving the dwarves, leaving all the elves and Bard and the people of Lake Town, who before this point he's been really concerned about. To just leave and abandon all of them and go into hiding with the ring on and be invisible, I feel like that comes across as really cowardly. In the book, it doesn't. He does it to sort of, he's a hobbit. He doesn't do battle. He doesn't do war, but he is on the side of the Elven King. And it's when the eagles fly over, dropping rocks on the orcs. A stray rock hits him on the helmet, which knocks him out. That's a different context in the book, and it works in the book. But how the film presents the courage in battle and everything, and how he's been there for everyone, I think having Bilbo just run away by himself seems pretty cowardly. So that's the reason that I didn't put that in my film. So I still might not do it with this edit either. I might just keep it as it is. And Merry Christmas Eve, Tobias. Dirty Sanchez says, intro is fine. Problems start with 8 dwarves collapsing into the room. Well, that's very much like the book, and indeed Thorin is with the company of dwarves that collapse into the room. Now, I'm going to show something that JX Editor's worked up for me with, I don't know, he's got some kind of like AI software where you put a still image in, you put a JPEG into it, and it animates that JPEG, sometimes really weirdly, almost like an acid trip, and other times, in the case of what I'm about to show you, I actually think it's done it really quite effectively and really well. So during this scene in the book, and let me get it to the specific part, actually. It's where Gandalf pulls out the key to hand Thorin. It's right before the contract, isn't it? So here we go. Yeah, so it's where Gandalf says, that my dear Balin is not entirely true, and he pulls out the key. Thorin in the film says, "How came you by this?" And Gandalf delivers the line, "It was given to me by your father, by Thrain, for safekeeping. It is yours now." And there's an exchange of the key, passes it over. I wonder if I can get that shot there. It's right before that, I think. There you go. You see the hands sort of passing the key over as the dwarves look on. Now, in the book, there's a little bit more context to that and a little bit more backstory of exactly what Gandalf did to acquire this key and where he found it. And the tone is very, very different. They kind of adapt this storyline in the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug, but the timeline is completely fucked and completely off and doesn't make any sense at all. But the footage exists. So in the book, Gandalf mentions that he went on a solo mission to Dol Guldur many years before the events of The Hobbit. And when he was there scoping things out to check if Sauron was there, he discovered this dwarf who was a prisoner there who'd gone completely insane. He didn't remember his own name. And right before he died, he kept mentioning Last of the Seven. And he handed him a map and a key to Erebor. Now, Gandalf didn't know the significance of these items, really. He didn't know who this person was. And it wasn't until many years later, as he was deliberating over everything that he was saying, Last of the Seven, he realized that it was actually Thrain. And so Thorin's father, who'd gone mad and pretty much died in his arms right there and then in Dol Guldur. Now, that footage exists. That's in the extended cut of Desolation of Smaug. However, Thrain is still alive during the events of the Hobbit films, and he discovers him in Dol Guldur in the extended cut, and then Thrain has already given the map and the key to Gandalf before the events of the Hobbit, but he's like, Thrain in the book is really gung-ho. He's like, yeah, I want my son to try and reclaim Erebor. Whereas in the film, he's like, no one must enter that mountain. Like, please tell me that Thorin hasn't tried to go into the mountain. So it's completely fucked. But I was wondering if in this scene, this could be the first mention of the Necromancer. Because, as I say, the footage is there. So changing the tone of it a little bit, I'll have to change the music here a little bit and maybe some like AI voice from Ian McKellen, which is doable. I think the Gandalf voice actually sounds pretty good on AI. And have him say, that my dear Balin is not entirely true, pulls out the key. Thorin says, how came you by this? And then have Gandalf say, it was given to me by your father, by Thrain. Then we go into a flashback, continue some voiceover of Gandalf, and I can take lines from the book where he's describing what he's doing. Shots of him wandering through Dol Guldur. Shots of him with Thrain. Now, I'll show you the AI shot that JX Editor's done for me. So it's only 6 seconds. The AI generator that he has caps you at 6 seconds. The JPEG that I gave him to work with was Thrain on the floor after Gandalf's kind of done his magic spell to calm him down. So Gandalf sort of crouched over him, and Thrain's on the floor. And I asked JX if he could do a shot where, so you type in the command of what you want, and you have to be really specific. It's like bearded man on right pulls, bearded tattooed man on right pulls out key and hands it to man on left of screen or something. You have to be really specific like that. So I've got the video here. It's 6 seconds. I'm just going to click it now so you guys can see what the result is. But like, I think that looks really good. Like, just to take a still image, as I say, like AI is insane now. How it matches the clothing and everything. Now I know the key is completely different, so I will have to edit the key to look like the one that's in the actual film. So I'll have to do a picture edit and then maybe run it through a different AI. But as a proof of concept, like if I'm doing a flashback scene and, Thrain pulls out the key and then I can have a reaction shot of Gandalf and then I can synth it so the key is passed to Gandalf's hand or something. I could even then match cut it with this shot that you can see right here. So you have Thrain passing the key to Gandalf and then we cut back to normal and Gandalf passing the key to Thorin. That could be pretty cool. And it would also be the first mention of the Necromancer in the film. Currently in my edit, the first time the Necromancer gets mentioned is during the White Council scene. And we get a bit of insight as to what Gandalf's planning with the White Council and to explain where he goes off to during the events of the film. That would completely change everything, because we get our first mention of the Necromancer here to establish what he is and the mystery surrounding him, and that he is an entity to be feared. And then when you get to the White Council scene and they're discussing things of the Necromancer, we'll already have some insight as to who that is. It's an idea I'm playing with. I think it would be a nice bit of, lore building and whatnot, but how necessary it is to the plot, I could just keep it as it is in the film. Maybe if I keep it as it is, the tone will be more consistent. But I think that just looks really cool. I'm just really happy with how that turned out. So maybe it's an idea I'm playing with. If I do put it in the film, I'll probably edit the whole film first and then maybe try and do something with that if I feel it's really necessary. But yeah, moving on. So honestly, like the first part of this film, I'm really happy with. Like it's one of the strongest bits of the film. So we get them on the quest, they get moving, and then we get to our troll scene. So all of this can stay. My troll scene is cut down to remove some of the overly slapstick elements and like fart jokes and burp jokes and some of the over the top CGI action, which I feel kind of ruins the experience a little bit and the peril of the scene. A thing that's important as well, I mean, this is evident in the book and something that I wanted to bring into my edit as well, is that rising tension slowly, and the peril grows as they get further and further along their quest. So it's got to start from a small place, and that's why I immediately knew that I wanted to take out the prologue scene of Smaug attacking Erebor and the backstory and whatnot, and the Battle of Azan-ul-Bizar with Azog and whatnot. I wanted to get rid of all of that and just open it like the book does. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. We start small in the Shire where we're comfortable, and then really our first obstacle, the comedy trolls. Now, I do think that they play the comedy up a little bit too much in the actual film itself, but I have tried to cut that down as much as I can. But that's our first peril, and it's still relatively light-hearted. It's nothing too serious and terrifying. Then we have a nice little rest in Rivendell, and then that's when we start to ramp up the tension. So just getting to Rivendell, probably going to keep Rivendell the same. One thing that I'm not keen on, but I feel like needs to be there, after they acquire the swords, I have this little traveling montage, which I took from earlier in the film and moved it to this point. So just as a way to get them from A to B, basically. And then I have this shot taken from, I think that's taken from Desolation of Smaug, actually, when Radagast and Gandalf go to the High Fells. There's a little bit of a landscape shot here, which matches the same kind of area. So I took this and then merged it into the extended edition here, where they make their way to Rivendell. And I think that works. The issue is that, after they get the swords, we see them on the, traveling on ponies again. We're moving, we're covering ground. And then the next time we see them, they're just totally on foot and they've abandoned the ponies. Now, that's fine. They could have abandoned the ponies. We don't need to see a scene of that. We could infer that this mountain pass that they go through to get to Rivendell is completely impenetrable, and, they're struggling to squeeze through as it is, let alone being laden with however many horses and ponies they've got. So I think it still works just fine, but I think the troll scene allows them to an explanation as to where the ponies run off to. Once Bilbo cuts the pens that they're trapped in free, the horses bolt and run away, and that gets them out of the picture. So, but I still think this traveling montage works to get us to Rivendell. In the book, they keep the ponies all the way until they get to the goblins, and then the goblins take the ponies and, probably eat them. I think it's even said in the book that the goblins eat the horses that they take. So you got to work with what you've got. So I might just leave this as it is. I don't have like a major problem with it, in all honesty. We get to Rivendell. I've moved some scenes around just to try and keep things as streamlined as possible. For example, here, after the swords are named, and Thorin takes his leave. In the actual film, I believe it goes into nighttime, and it's where they discover the moon runes, and then it cuts to daytime, and then it's Bilbo, and it's just kind of structured a little bit weirdly. So I've just kept it here. They're here for dinner, and then we're keeping it in daytime and whatnot. Bilbo's out walking. So we keep all this. This is a really nice extended scene here. You're very welcome to stay if that is your wish. That's definitely staying in. It's a nice bit of interaction that I think works for this as well. It reminds Bilbo of home, but it also reminds us of where he'll go to for essentially his retirement in the Lord of the Rings films. Bath Time says, what happened from last night for an emergency Hobbit stream? I just felt like I wanted to jump on and talk some Lord of the Rings stuff, talk some Middle-earth stuff, and I did mention on my community post that I was aiming to do an update video, this Hobbit update video over the weekend just gone. Unfortunately, I couldn't fit it in, and things got in the way, so I thought, well, I'll get it in now, and then I'll be streaming tomorrow night as well, so, more streams to come. Tobias says, one change he made that I really appreciated was in Mirkwood, and when Bilbo goes to kill the spider, remove the part with him taking off the ring. Always seemed weird for him to do that in the OG. Yeah, so I both love and hate that scene of how they handled that. So in the book, the spiders can talk, and, like Attercop, and all of that stuff, Bilbo singing a happy song. I do wish that some of the previous stuff that they had of Bilbo fighting the spiders and being a bit more courageous in that scene was left intact. Bilbo kind of gets taken out of the spider fight very early on, and then it's really just the dwarves again that do all the fighting. And I'm like, no, this is meant to be Bilbo's moment, Bilbo's story, the moment where Bilbo constantly proves himself and fends off the spiders and fights them. But I really like how they integrated the talking spiders into Peter Jackson's world. The spider that we've seen before this point is, of course, Shelob, who doesn't talk. And then we saw spiders earlier on in Unexpected Journey with the whole Radagast scene, and they didn't talk there. And he's the guy that talks to animals, and we didn't hear them talk. So I thought it was really smart that the only moment we actually hear the spiders talk is when he slips the ring on, and he's in like the Wraith world, he's in the Shadow Realm, and, evil is amplified kind of thing. And that's when he hears them in their language. I thought that was actual genius move. The problem is they don't stick with that, because in the actual film, how it plays out, Bilbo takes the ring off, stabs the spider, and then the spider goes like, it stings. And I'm like, okay, so he can hear the spiders when he takes the ring off, unless it was some kind of delayed reaction. It's weird how it plays out in the original film. So I'm like, he needs to keep the ring on as he stabs the spider when he hears it say sting. And yeah, so that will stay the same. I'll keep that edit the same. Bath Time says, you're going to cut in Senor Legolas from Rings of Power building Rivendell. No, I am not, I'm afraid. Dirty Sanchez says, no reason in the movie for him to understand them talking without the ring. Yeah, no, I agree. And Bath Time says, I liked it when he went mine after massacring them and picking up the ring. I think only Martin Freeman could sell that line. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, he kills that. What is it? It looks like something that was in Peter Jackson's King Kong. When they fall off the log into the bug pit? It looks like something from that scene, because it doesn't look like a spider, and it's like a crab. It's some kind of arachnid anyway. I don't know what the fuck it is. But yeah, he just wails on it, doesn't he? Like cutting its legs off, and then heavy breathing and stuff, labored breathing, and it's like, mine. That's a fine scene. I think it's delivered well, but I think at that moment, with that scene included, I think the ring's hold is too much. It's too evil at this point, and the ring shouldn't have that quick effect on Bilbo. I mean, the real reason, the real explanation for that in the actual book continuity in real life is that the Lord of the Rings hadn't been written yet. The ring wasn't that significant. It was just a magic trinket that Bilbo picked up on his journey to help him on his quest. That was all it was. So I think having, erring on the side of being a bit more subtle with the ring and what it will eventually lead into with the Lord of the Rings films is probably better. So I've removed that scene of the spider. I have it where the ring falls off and he's kind of looking around for it frantically. He sees it, he picks it up, and the music is a little bit sinister. So we're seeing that attachment already that he has to the ring without him having to completely slaughter a weird like crab thing. I think it's more because like, what the fuck is this creature meant to be? Because it ain't a spider. Like, what is it meant to be? I'm gonna keep all this, you know, with the moon runes and whatnot. I actually really like this room, like this landscape shot here. I thought this was a really, really creative way to do the moon runes, to be honest. Like, I love this little like crystal structure that's pierced through the rock that's used as a table. This is all good stuff. I really like this location. I think it's really visual. So all this is staying. This scene. So they talk it. So Elrond mentions to Gandalf and Bilbo and Thorin overhear it, that a strain of madness runs deep in Thorin's family. His grandfather lost his mind and his father succumbed to the same sickness, implying dragon sickness. Now, I don't have the prologue, so I could probably get away with this, but Thorin's grandfather in the movie becomes really greedy for the Arkenstone and for the gold before Smaug even attacks. Now, in the book, dragon sickness is just a term that's just like a metaphor for greed, essentially. That gold makes you greedy and covetous, as if you are a dragon, because dragons by nature have a love of gold. Like, I love gold, but they do. And that's all the term dragon sickness was meant to infer. But then in the movie, and I think even this line is dropped in the book as well, gold over which a serpent or a dragon has long brooded, that there is actually a curse, a tangible curse placed upon the gold that is perpetuated by the presence of a dragon having been there for a number of years, you know, a considerable number of years. And that doesn't work because Thror had dragon sickness before Smaug had even attacked the mountain. So that doesn't really work in continuity with the movie. So I don't know how much of this conversation to keep in here about the whole dragon sickness thing with Elrond and Gandalf, but I do think it is a nice bit of foreshadowing for later in the movie. On the topic of dragon sickness, though, one thing I am tempted to get rid of is the extent of Thorin's dragon sickness, because he really acts like it's like a possession. He acts how Frodo does under the influence of the One Ring, and I don't feel that's how dragon sickness should be. I feel like Thorin should just be a fallible character, that he becomes greedy and covetous and narrow-minded all off his own back, not from some kind of magical curse or outside influence placed upon the gold. That means that I am going to be losing a lot of Thorin scenes, especially in Battle of the Five Armies, where he, you know, shows off that possessed quality to the nth degree in those films. But I don't know, maybe that would help the pacing a little bit more if he is just sort of like a greedy, jealous asshole kind of thing, rather than actually having a curse upon the treasure. Let's see. Dirty Sanchez says, do you know the random film talk breakdown? Yes, I actually watched all of those videos fairly recently. And some of the criticisms that maybe I wasn't even aware of before that point have kind of been highlighted to me. This scene included, actually, about the dragon sickness thing. And it has made me sort of rethink my edit and the concept of dragon sickness, and maybe I should downplay it a little bit more, which would also reduce the runtime of the movie, which is what I'm looking to do a little bit more, and also get rid of a scene where the rotoscoping looks terrible, where Thorin comes to his senses. And let's be fair, even in the context of the original movie, even in the context of this edit, Thorin just suddenly listening to audio clips from the previous films and snapping out of the dragon sickness is a little bit strange. So maybe that scene can be taken out. Bath Time says, I've always found it interesting how the Hobbit's love of food and comforts is idealized, but a similar greed for gold is for bad eggs. Well, I think like a love of home, it's just that comfortability, isn't it? You know, what Tolkien was inspired by various different shires in the West Midlands, and you know, he probably identified, I assume, a lot with the character of Bilbo Baggins and just putting your feet up after a hard day's work. Only you've never done a hard day's work, Pippin. You know, smoking a pipe and eating food and going to the pub and having a drink with your mates kind of thing. That is kind of what life was all about, really. And just being content for the life you have. So I think it's different. You see that, you know, money can be used for good. And I think that is showed in the Hobbit book as well. By the end of the book, when all the gold is distributed, that gold itself is not a bad thing. It's bad when you try and possess it all yourself and don't share it out and aren't frugal with your money. You know what I mean? Like, and we see that when all the gold is distributed, Lake Town is rebuilt again. The dwarves come to prosperity. The elves are given it's the emeralds of Girion, isn't it? If I remember rightly in the book. It's the white gems of Lascalain in the movie, but I think it's the emeralds of Girion. And it shows that, you know, sharing is good and it's nice, and how we all can prosper if we all distribute the wealth out rather than, you know, trying to keep it all for ourselves, which I think the book was showing. Let's see. Bath Time says you're not getting rid of the twirly whirlies, are you? I never had the twirly whirlies in my edit, so yeah, unfortunately the twirly whirlies, twiddly widdlies, they're gone. They're not in the movie. They're absolutely ridiculous, and I don't have the dwarves engaging the elves. I keep it much like the book where it says, what was it? Bows twanged or something. It's almost about to come to blows between the dwarves and the elves, but then the goblins and the orcs show up at the last minute. So I've tried to keep it the same as that, where they all get riled up and you've got Dane, you know, doing his battle cry, and they're all going like, oh, you know, like the 300 Spartans, and you've got the elves that are forming and getting in formation and getting the bows ready, but then the orcs show up. So I've kept it the same as that. Let's keep moving forward then. So yeah, some of the dragon sickness might be downplayed. This White Council scene, I'm going to keep exactly the same. Originally, I did have the scene more or less play out in full, and we didn't cut away from this location. Again, I really like this location, like the cinematography, like that. I just think that's wonderful. I'm going to keep this scene as it is. There was some modified Christopher Lee dialogue in there, and now with AI as well. I think that's going to be a lot more seamless than it was originally, where I think I actually used some lines from Kingdom Hearts 2, because Christopher Lee plays a character in that. So there was like a 10-minute voice compilation of all of his lines from the game, and I managed to rework some of those that would sort of fit into context of what he's talking about in regards to Sauron and the Necromancer. And this scene, a lot of the dialogue had to be reworked as well, because at this point in the actual film, they don't know who the Necromancer is. They think that it may be Sauron, but they're not really sure, and they're mulling it over, and, you know, Saruman's like, it's nothing to worry about, don't worry about it. Whereas in the actual lore in the book, they're very well aware that it's Sauron. And it's right around this time that Saruman agrees that they should do something about it. So the whole context of the conversation had to be changed from them not from doubting Gandalf, and also from Gandalf going from, I think something's afoot, I think things are suspicious, to, no, we actually, you know, Sauron is a thing and we need to go and do something about it. Sauron is very firmly established at this point. I think Gandalf made 2 previous trips into Dol Guldur. I think the first time he went in, Sauron fled before him. So he never got any concrete evidence. And then the second time he went in, I actually think the second time he went in and confirmed that the Necromancer was Sauron, was also the same trip where he met Thrain. Although he didn't realize it was Thrain at the time, and he acquired the map and the key. It was that same meeting where all of that happened. So I want to keep this. Yeah, as I say, like originally I had this whole White Council scene play out in full as it is in the movie, pretty much, removing some of the lines. But the pacing really slowed down and we lost focus from Bilbo, and a big part of it, I know he kind of loses focus a little bit in Battle of the Five Armies. There's not really a whole lot I can do about that, unfortunately, because there's a lot of other factors at play towards the end of the story. But certainly this scene, I wanted to keep the focus on Bilbo, so ended up intercutting it with this extended scene here of, so the voice of the White Council, their meeting is still going on as they're talking about Sauron and the Necromancer. You have this shot here of the mural to Sauron, with the ring removed on Sauron's hand as well. In the Lord of the Rings, this painting, when it shows up, there is no ring on Sauron's hand on the painting, and then for some reason in The Hobbit, they went back and said, oh yeah, we kind of forgot to put the ring on his hand in the Lord of the Rings, so we're going to paint the one ring on his hand now, which breaks continuity, so I had to get rid of the ring for this shot here. I actually can't remember if this was an edited JPEG of that shot from The Hobbit, where I removed the ring on his hand, or if this is actually from The Lord of the Rings and I've like zoomed it in. I actually can't remember. So all this is going to stay the same. I'm pretty much happy with all of this here. Had to get rid of the Morgul blade on the table, so that's going to be fun to do. But hey, I mean, I originally edited all this on Final Cut Pro 7, which is a very, very old software now. And it wasn't until towards the end of the edit where JX kind of taught me how to use Adobe Premiere and After Effects. And then that's when some new things started creeping in. But this rotor on the table, I actually did with Final Cut Pro 7 and the very limited rotoing tools that they have on there. And masking tools, sorry, it was a mask. So if anything, if I could do it on that, I can do it on Premiere Pro. It's just getting back into the mindset of knowing, you know, the actual cutting and the editing together of the film is the fun bit, but then you got to go in and got to do this really meticulous stuff. Yeah. That's the non-fun part, but it you know, it all needs to be done, doesn't it? So all this is going to be the same. We go on the quest. Right. And then right after this point, we get to the stone giants. What are our thoughts and opinions on the whole stone giant thing? I'm just going to leave that on the screen while we talk about it. So it's a very frustrating scene to me because on the one hand, I think visually, it's one of the most impressive feats of CGI in the whole Hobbit trilogy. I think they look amazing. Now, they get away with that because it's nighttime, it's raining, but the lightning flashing on them. I think they are really imposing. I think they are really cool. However, I don't know if the existence of these monolithic Titan-like creatures kind of break the world of Middle-earth a little bit. And in the book, they are mentioned in passing, but they are probably more akin to trolls rather than these absolute, you know, biblical Goliaths, Titans in the distance throwing shit. Relatively close to Rivendell, by the way. So I don't know how these things are legend, because, I mean, fucking look at them. So I'm thinking of maybe removing the stone giant scene. Another thing that I think adds to that is the fact that kind of cutting scenes where the plot isn't particularly advanced in any way, or we're not really getting much information out of it. This is just for spectacle only. And it is a book reference, but it's like one sentence. You could very much have them just traversing the Misty Mountains at nighttime in the rain, with lightning happening and Bilbo slipping off the cliff and Thorin, you know, helping him back up. And that's the peril. It's the landscape. If you really want, you know, the book reference in there, maybe I could roto a particular shot of the stone giants fighting each other or throwing a rock at each other. I'm actually trying to find an example now. Doesn't one get like Rock'em Sock'em Robot? Like this bit maybe, or one where one chucks a rock. This bit, boom, like that bit. I could maybe roto those two, shrink them down, and have them very much in the background of the shot. Like, if you've read the book and you're looking out for it, you could go, oh, what are those things in the background over there? That's kind of cool. Just keeping it as that. They don't actually get referenced. They're just there doing their thing in the background as like a bit of set decoration. Because I do think it's weird as well in the actual film. There's this huge, you know, monolithic, epic Rock'em Sock'em Robot mountains coming alive and fighting each other, and the company gets separated on the knees of another one, and they're swirling around and they get smashed into the mountainside, but then all of them are fine for some reason, barely an inconvenience. And then the whole stone giant thing just stops. And it stops being a threat. We don't hear them in the background. Nothing happens. It's like they were never there. So I think you could very much get rid of them. It'll cut the runtime down by a couple of minutes, which is nice. I don't think they're... I quite like this as spectacle. I think it's great. Like, I quite like the CGI on it. I think they look cool. But I don't know if it's perhaps a step too far for Middle-earth. And it's not an action scene that advances the plot. You very much could have Bilbo just slipping of his own accord, as would probably be very easy to do on that mountainside as they're traveling. And then you have the goblin scene right afterwards, which is where the threat starts to ramp up a little bit more. I'm going to read some of your comments. Let's see what you guys think. Bath Time says, would you ever consider using something like the... I don't know how you pronounce that, AI voice cloning program? Yeah, so some of the characters, I actually got some voice actors to do some of the voices in this. Some are better than others. I appreciate all of them for dedicating their time and actually, sending me all those voice clips. Of course, I'm appreciative of that, but in hindsight, some are definitely better than others. And now with how far AI's come within 3 years, well, even just sort of appearing on the scene and being able to be used now with some pretty decent results, hit and miss results, but pretty good results on the whole. I would quite like to use AI voices sparingly, just for sort of like the same bits that I've got in my edit. Tobias says, Stone Giants, I like the scene, but it could be condensed. Scene edits where they cut out the company getting separated. Yeah, so that's what I've done. I've cut out the scene. I've tried to sort of intercut Bilbo. I think I have. I might be wrong. Bilbo falling off the ridge and holding on during the actual Stone Giants battle, so it keeps them present, but they still do kind of disappear right afterwards. You have to work with what you've got. I think I've added a couple of sound effects in the background to infer that they've maybe moved further away. I think I reused some of the like rocks punching each other, or when they're throwing the rocks. I think I took that soundbite and replicated it again and just brought the volume down and faded it out like the fight is still going on somewhere. Tobias says, for the sake of the movie, you need an action set piece after 30 minutes of talking in Rivendell. You do, but you get the goblin scene right after it. So, you have your rising tension there, and then you have out of the frying pan. So, I don't know. I'm undecided. I really kind of don't have an opinion on it. I don't hate the scene. My cut down version of the scene, at least, where I split the part where they get separated. I have removed that part, so I don't mind it. Like, I'm fine with it, but I'm just thinking, if I am trying to cut the runtime down for this updated version to make it a little bit more palatable, I don't think I'm going to get it as short as some edits. I know some edits have done like a 3-hour edit. Some have done like a 4-hour edit that sort of breaks even with Return of the King extended cut. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it down that short. I mean, this currently stands at 5 hours and, 5 hours, 7 minutes. Even with the scenes that I'm removing, potentially, it ain't going to cut it down by that much. It'll probably be like 4 hours 50, maybe 4:55. So I'm undecided. Bath Time says, this was far too in focus. I always imagine it miles above and away as unfocused shapes. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it is. Let me just grab the book real quick. 2 seconds. Let me just grab that. Oh, this has been my book that I've had since I was like 8 or 9. And look at its fate since those 3 years. Unfortunately, the front cover's fallen off. It makes me really sad, but I can't throw this away. But I probably do need to buy a different copy of the book for like a reading copy. Feels good going back to this, actually. It always does. It feels like coming home when I go to this book. I'm going to try and briefly find where it mentions the stone giants if I can. I'll just try and like skim and see if I can see it. It's in Out of the Frying Pan, isn't it? I believe is the chapter, if I remember rightly. And I know that Thorin says we'll be kicked sky high for a football. I know that that's a quote in there, which was always slightly weird. Stone giant, stone giant. I'll keep looking for it, maybe. But yeah, I think to your point about having them be in the distance, I think that is how it goes down in the book. No, it's not. What am I talking about? It's over hill and under hill, isn't it? It's not out of the frying pan. What am I talking about? Over hill and under hill. God, do I even know The Hobbit? Jesus. Made that mistake. Stone giants. Okay, kick sky high for a football. Right. Okay, here we go. I think this is it. Bilbo had never seen or imagined anything of the kind. They were high up in a narrow place with a dreadful fall into a dim valley at one side of them. There they were sheltering under a hanging rock for the night, and he lay beneath a blanket and shook from head to toe. When he peeped out in the lightning flashes, he saw that across the valley, the stone giants were out and were hurling rocks at one another for a game, and catching them and tossing them down into the darkness where they smashed among the trees far below, or splintered into little bits with a bang. So yeah, he's peering across the valley and he can just see them in the lightning flashes, which implies that they're not, skyscraper-sized titans like fucking kaiju or something. But then it says that, the rocks fell down and smashed among the trees far below. So how exactly far below? That's the question. Because in the case of these things, it would be far below. But I get the impression that they're probably not this big. They're going to be giant, but not that giant. So, yeah, maybe putting them in the distance, perhaps. And then they just said, we'll be kicked sky high for a football if we stay here any longer. That's pretty much it. That's the only mention of the stone giants. Dirty Sanchez says, I feel like you have to get rid of everything which logically should have turned the major battles in the OG trilogy, so stone giants and earth eaters. Well, I got rid of the earth eaters, yeah, so I'm thinking maybe stone giants, because yeah, why wouldn't Sauron recruit these motherfuckers for his army, They seem like they'd come in handy in a tight spot, these lads, despite the fact they're made of rock. Bath Time says, is there any way you could use the Radagast footage to make an Apocalypto-style film for him? Apocalypto? How do you figure on that one? That's a great movie, by the way, but... Bath Time, did you just put that up so no one looked at your ass? No, I'm wearing bottoms. Ugh. But I just didn't want you to see me awkwardly scrambling for the book. I'm not one of those streamers that, it's just above the waist. I do actually wear bottoms, believe it or not. My God. Bath Time says you should 100% edit in some Dune stuff with an orc learning how to surf on Earth Eaters. Was it Lizan Al Gaib? Yeah, maybe. So yeah, stone giants, undecided at the moment. I think that will probably be a last decision that I make, whether I keep them in or remove them entirely, or just have them in the background as a bit of set dressing in case you've read the books and you go, okay, that's cool attention to detail. I like that. Then we get into the mountain itself. This Bofur scene's really nice, and I like how this is bookended later in the movie. Yeah, the color correction in this scene doesn't look good that I've done. This is really bright in the actual film and really saturated. It's almost completely orange and brown, and there's firelights going on and whatnot. I think what I did for this scene originally was I had the scene in Fellowship of the Ring where they're running away from the goblins to the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, and you have that really creepy one with the massive eyes that like snarls into the camera. I think I took a JPEG of that, and when I put this into... So all of this color correction stuff was when I started to use Adobe Premiere a bit more. And it was like a change to color effect that I did. So I clicked the skin tone on the goblin, and then I had it switch to the skin tone of sort of like the green, grayish one from the Fellowship. Because these are meant to be the same. I can't make them the same, unfortunately. But these are meant to be the same creatures as we saw in Fellowship of the Ring. And I just needed to make it a lot darker. I was like, how dark can I make this scene before you start to not see the image? But when you watch it on TV, there's like this weird sort of like blue hue to it. You can probably see it here a little bit, maybe if I just pause it in a certain way. It's very blue, like the rocks in the background. It's not really dark. It's kind of like the Helm's Deep scene where it's meant to be at nighttime, but it's in moonlight, so we can actually see it, and there's like a blue hue to it. I need to try and eliminate that. So I want to spend a bit more time on the whole color correction in this scene. Still want to make it dark, not to the point where everything's completely obscured, but getting rid of some of this blue and just making it, as I think it's described in the book, deep, deep dark, which is what it's meant to be. Trying to see if you can see. Yeah, it's just really not great color correction during this scene. I'm not particularly happy with how this turned out. I'm happy that it's a lot darker, and I think even that can sort of change the mood a little bit of some of these characters when the picture quality is a little bit dark and it's a little bit more sickly looking, which I think is what this scene should be, and it's not as bright and garish. It does take away some of those more cartoony elements and does add a little bit more menace to it, I suppose. So I actually need to rewatch this scene just to see if I'm happy with the flow of it, but I think I am. Bolg gets mentioned here. Send word to Bolg, tell him I found his prize. But I don't cut to I don't cut between this and Gollum. I wanted the whole goblin scene and then keeping Riddles in the Dark unbroken, more to match the flow of the book and the chapters there. So right from this scene where the little scribe goes away, we go straight into... Oh yeah, I did a rendition here, didn't I, of the clap snap down 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 in Goblin Town song. But I really cut it down. It's just a few sentences, a few verses, and it's almost like this gleeful song that the Goblin King starts singing as they're bringing up the torture devices to murder them all. So I think how it plays out in this version that I did, it's a lot more sinister. It was nice that they integrated that music, I suppose, but it tonally did not fit the Hobbit films at all, especially at that point in the film. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with that, with the Barry Humphries song there. It just didn't work for me at all. But I think here, like, I still reference the song. It's still in there somehow, but the whole mood and feel of it's changed. So I'm going to leave this all as it is. I've still got the blades here, glowing blue. I don't know if that glowing blue effect really works for me there. Oh, I've got to do that again, haven't I? I've got to do all the rotoing on the blades. Yeah, this is going to take longer than 2 weeks. The rotoing takes an ungodly amount of time. I think it took me a couple of months, actually, to do all the blue blades. One thing I was thinking of doing, and this is a real easy way out, and I'm how would you guys feel about this, is that I edit it all with the new footage that I've got. But some of the scenes like this, where it was like the blue blades, I could just put my edit on top, cut around the blue blade part, and just superimpose that on my new footage. You know, I know I'm technically not doing it all from scratch, but rotoing those blades was painstaking. You know, every few frames you have to move every single individual point on that sword as it tracks across the screen. Have I really got to do all of that from scratch again, or do you think I could get away with just, if the quality matches and it's not, you know, really obvious that the sword is really grainy because it's from less quality footage on the new one, I think I can maybe get away with doing that, which would save a lot of time on this project, would save months, potentially months and months on it. This scene here, so there's a bit of a geographical jump here. So they're all on this platform, right? And this is when Gandalf shows up and he's like helping clear the way. I'm going to have to pause this a little bit, aren't I? Now, in the book at this point, Gandalf is the one that kills the Goblin King. He shows up, he kills the Great Goblin and they escape. Now, in the movie, there's this really weird, perplexing part where Thorin gets his sword back, Orcrist, and the Great Goblin takes a swing at Thorin. Thorin blocks this huge, massive fucking club from the Great Goblin as he swings it. and it makes like a magical sound, like it repulses, it throws the great goblin back, and he falls off the edge, and you assume that he dies at that point. That power from that sword is never shown again. So just like a simple question of physics, Thorin's holding up his sword to block, and the great goblin with a massive staff just swings it down. Thorin's getting flattened. He ain't holding that sword in place, and the sword doesn't really have any magical properties in that sense in the rest of the film. So that's why I cut later on. Yeah, so this shot takes place later. You can see they're on a bridge now and not so much a platform. So the background has changed here. And a lot of people at the time were complaining about this, saying that I should just keep the scene in of Thorin, of the Great Goblin falling off the platform. But I didn't want to do that because it doesn't, like, that power from that sword is never shown ever again after that point. So that's why I moved this footage here. But they are quite clearly on a bridge. I think I did actually drop the footage here so you couldn't exactly see what they were standing on, so you could still maybe infer they were on the platform. Stabs him in the eye, slashes him across the belly. I've added some extra blood here on the side as well. I don't know if you can really see that. You can kind of see that in front of the blade. I had like a black blood spray fly out just to make it a little bit more visceral. Oh, there we go. So he's kind of on the bridge there, isn't he? A few shots from later on in the end, and then boom, we're back to that platform look, and you can't see the dead body of the Great Goblin there. So yeah, there is a little bit of continuity issues with that whole bit there, which I guess the simple way to get around that is just to keep the bit where Thorin blocks the Great Goblin and he falls off, and that's just how the Great Goblin dies in this version of the film, as opposed to Gandalf killing him. But what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's really noticeable, or how would you go about that scene? I'm just gonna have a quick drink of water, guys, because I'm doing a lot of talking. Bath Time says, I'd have thought with lightsaber stuff, the rotoscoping would be far easier now. So I don't know if it's exactly the same principle as lightsaber stuff, because what I did was, it was actually JX Editor who had the initial video on his channel of how to do this effect, and I asked him and he guided me through the whole process. You have to draw around the blade, and I can't remember if there was 2 layers on it. One was like a glow layer, and then you do a second layer on top of it, and that's where you get the blue sort of like outer glow. I think eventually I just resorted to doing the 1 layer and just having the blue glow, and I got rid of the white layer on there. But it really was draw around the blade, move it a few frames, keyframe it, either drag the outline or move every single individual point again. As I say, it took months. It was mind-numbing. I'd get back from work and I'd spend like 3 hours just listening to music and just moving points. I was like slipping into my own sanity doing that, but yeah, Dirty Sanchez says you simply can't imagine the Fellowship encountering this version of the Goblin King. I agree. I do. I agree. I got to work with what I've got, unfortunately. So the only way that I can kind of square it in my mind is that at this point, we're still slowly ramping up that tension. You have the nice, comfortable Shire opening. You ramp it up a little bit more with the comedy trolls. You flatten out with Rivendell. I guess you ramp it up a bit more with the Stone Giants. You ramp it up a little bit more with still comedy goblins, really. But they are a little bit more sinister and a little bit more murderous, probably, than the trolls actually are. And slightly cleverer, I suppose. I might be giving them a bit too much credit. Then we have Gollum, and then boom, we hit fever pitch once we bring Bolg into it with the orcs, and then we're rolling from there pretty much. Bath Time says, I'm sure there's stuff on GitHub that can help you with this kind of stuff. I mean, I really hope so. If there is, then fantastic. You know, if it's a case of loading footage in and just saying track this and doing it effectively, then let's fucking go. But if not, I might be inclined to just mask around the sword that I need and then just put it over the new footage. Maybe that's the lazy way out. I'll see when I'm doing it, because I did say that this is an updated version and it might be worth just, updating the whole thing. One thing I am tempted to get rid of, which again could shorten the runtime. Let me just back this up a little bit. Yeah, so here, after they kill the goblin, I have to keep pausing this so I don't get into any hot water. You see them running here. It's a wide shot, and we zoom in, and Gandalf's like, run! And then I continue it into the edit. This is from later in the film. I just have like a shot of all the goblins sort of like scrambling down the cliff. And then we go into another shot of the company running from left to right. Oh, that was an absolute bastard to track the swords on that shot there. Yeah, another wide shot as we pan around to the goblins chasing them. Essentially, it's two shots doing exactly the same thing. We've just killed the goblins. The goblins are starting to run after us. We need to fucking run, and they run from left to right. I then cut to more goblins chasing them, and then we have another shot of running from left to right. I'm tempted to just get rid of that second shot there, and just I think that will probably flow better. So I'll probably end up getting rid of that one. It's not many seconds. It's probably about 10 seconds of footage, if that. But I just think for the flow of the edit, I think it'll work better. Bath Time says more dwarves need to die earlier to have a similar sense of danger to Fellowship. It's all building towards Boromir in some ways. Yeah, that's true, but I actually do appreciate Peter Jackson for, at least in that respect, staying true to the source material. In the only three that die are Philly, Killy, and Thorin. Dirty Sancho says, well, you're making such an effort already. Don't know if you should have months of additional editing because of the editor's laziness. But yeah, it's your passion project. It is. Knowing me, I probably will end up trying to do it all again. But I'm just thinking there's these shots which, believe it or not, I got rid of the main part where you have all the weird, crazy antics in the actual film of them escaping the goblins. I've pretty much cut all of that. So thank God that saved me a lot of time with the swords. But the real problem was during the whole Thorin and Azog fight on the ice, but more importantly was the Legolas and in the movie, the Legolas and Bolg fight on the stone bridge. That rotoing took the right royal piss. That was the worst shit ever to try and do that. It was horrible to do, but I could probably do it. Bathsime says, do you completely remove Legolas and Tauriel, or whatever she's called? I really wish I could, but no. So I've tried loads of different edits before, and there's one thing that beholdens Legolas to needing to be in the ending of this edit, and it's Orcrist. It's the sword that Thorin uses to fight Azog with on the ice. Legolas takes it when they search the dwarves. He takes Orcrist back for himself, but then Thorin ends up fighting Azog with that sword on the ice at the end of the film. So some edits that I've seen just kind of skirt around this and don't offer an explanation as to why Thorin's using that sword to condense the runtime so that they can get rid of Legolas completely from the ending. But that was a huge plot hole for me, watching a lot of those other edits that just leave that out. So I was like, right, Legolas needs to be in this film somehow at the ending. He does show up with tidings that there is a second army, but he needs to get that sword back. Because of that, you got to have him fighting Bolg, and you got to have him throwing the sword up and defying the laws of physics and launching a fucking steel sword 1,000,000 miles up a waterfall at high velocity to impale an orc with. I don't like that, but there's no way around it, unfortunately. And then that's what gets the sword back. So Legolas is kind of instrumental into it, really, at the end. I tried ways of getting rid of Orcrist and replacing it with a different sword, it just looked terrible. It was like a JPEG of another sword that was awkwardly moving around trying to mask out. It looked terrible, and there was just no way of doing it. The only way around it is to remove the whole on the ice fight with Thorin and Azog, having Bilbo get knocked out, waking up, and then just seeing that Thorin off screen has been stabbed by Azog, and that Azog off screen has been stabbed by Thorin, and it just makes the ending really, really anticlimactic. How the film is structured and how I've sort of given Azog's character in this, well, I've renamed him to Bolg, and I've given him a bit more of a motivation that's close to the book. And that tension between him and Thorin, for the movie at least, you really need that payoff. I even tried for a while to have Beorn be the one who shows up to kill Azog at the end, who's Bolg in my edit. I have to keep saying that so you guys know who I'm talking about. And I tried like a really rough version of it. I took a live action film where there's a bear attack, and I tried to roto it onto the ice and have Beorn charge in, but he's a real life bear in this. He's not a CGI bear because I took it from another film, and I had him sort of like charge in and crush and stand on top of Bolg and roar in his face and crush his chest in order to match the book, because in the book it's Beorn who shows up at the very end, and it says Beorn tore down Bolg himself and crushed him. And I would have loved to have kept that in, but someone mentioned at the time, like, look, dude, you don't have the footage. It doesn't look good for the movie. Just have Thorin be the one to kill him because it kind of fits more for the movie. So that's what I did. Battime says so you could just rotoscope out in the sword and not piss about with Legolas running up a falling. So I don't have the falling staircase. I did remove that scene, and I have cut the fight that he has with Bolg down considerably. But I still don't like it. It still means having Tauriel in there. Tauriel actually dies in my edit when she grapples Bolg and kicks off the rock and falls off. She dies during that fall, but unfortunately her sacrifice doesn't kill Bolg. So Legolas still does the over-the-top shit, which I hate, but at least, you know, he kind of gets an over-the-top moment in every movie, right? So I guess his over-the-top moment in this one is him launching off that tower, piercing the troll's head. I've cut it down so he doesn't sort of use it as a joystick all the time to sort of move it around. I just have him jumping off the tower, stabbing the troll in the head, and I guess as the troll's dying, he accidentally smacks the tower down, which creates a convenient bridge. You have a little bit of a fight with Bolg, and I actually have Bolg dying when Thorin throws that orc off the waterfall and the rocks kind of cave in and temporarily crush Bolg. I have him just dying in that way. And then you have Legolas throwing the sword up, and that's it. So that's Legolas's contribution there. Tauriel dies in that moment, and Legolas needs to be there to get the sword back to Thorin. So, yeah. Bathtime says maybe you could do the bit from Evil Dead 3 Army of Darkness and have an eagle drop the sword off as Thorin jumps up and it clicks in. Maybe. But the elves have got it, though. That's the issue. The elves have got it. Anyway, let's get back to this then real quick. So, scanning through the edit, I mean, this scene's absolutely fine. I think, again, I need to work on some of the color correction here. I did darken the scene considerably, but I still wanted it to be able to be seen. JX actually wanted me to do this scene in black and white. Because there would be absolutely no light in there. And I don't want to make it black and white, but I probably could even bump the saturation down even more. I mean, this rock that you can see right here on the right-hand side, you could still make out sort of like a lot of brown on that rock, like brownie hues to it. I could probably just try to bring the saturation down a little bit so there is no light or any sense of color permeating this entire scene. Oh, hang on, my mouse needs to reconnect. Give me a second and we will continue. Connection lost. I tell you what, wireless Mac mice are just terrible. So this scene, I mean, it's just fucking perfect, isn't it? I mean, this is almost exactly as it is in the book. I think the only change that I have in this whole scene is, other than the color correction, is that I've merged all of it together so it all plays out in one full scene rather than being intercut with the whole goblin stuff. And there was one small moment that I changed to make it closer to the book. In the book, Gollum says that he taught his grandmother how to suck eggs during the egg riddle. He says that he taught his grandmother how to do it, whereas in the movie, he says grandmother taught us to suck them. So in the movie, he says that his grandmother taught him how to do it, whereas in the book, Gollum says that he taught his grandma how to do it. So I flipped the audio for that to match the book. So I think I moved something. So I think he says like, we taught grandmother to suck them, yes, or something like that. So just to match the book a bit more. So I'll probably just keep that change so it's a little bit closer. Every little bit helps, even if it's just a little line like that. It might not seem like much, but it's just a little bit. Oh, yes, that was actually a change that I did make. Bath Time says it's quite cool when Gollum's eyes light up like a cat's. Yeah, so in the movie, when we're introduced to Gollum, it's where that goblin's kind of paralyzed on the floor after falling down with Bilbo. And Gollum stalks out of the darkness and he caves the goblin's head in with a rock and drags him away, and that's where he loses the ring. That intro to Gollum, to me, it didn't feel like the first time we're seeing Gollum. It felt like, well, you all know who Gollum is, right? You've seen him in the previous movies, so here he is. Here's Gollum again. I was trying to treat this as this could be an entry point. You know, this could be the first time you're watching this, so this would be the first time that we're meeting Gollum. So I removed that whole scene of him dragging the goblin away. I've had him do that already. And I removed the quick little shot, although it is from the book, of him sort of paddling across the water in his little wooden boat that he has. Because again, you see Gollum. So the first time that you see him in the distance there a little bit, but you can't really get a good look at him. Bilbo startles him here, doesn't he? And Gollum sort of reacts, there we go, and looks up. But again, we still can't really make him out. So the first time that we see him is slowly in this bit where, as an audience member, we discover and we see Gollum through Bilbo's eyes the first time that he properly sees him. And it's this great shot here. I'm going to have to keep pausing it, where he looks up. I think we get a hint of the eyes a little bit there as well. Yeah, glistening. And then, boom, there we go. And we get our first look at Gollum. So I'm going to keep that. I like that being the first time that we see him. All of this is absolutely just perfection as far as I'm concerned. It's just a really, really fucking good adaptation. Out of the Frying Pan's going to stay the same. Again, there's a few more shots of the glowing blades that I need. Again, this is the first time that we see... Oh, I forgot that I kept that in there. I have a reference to the 15 birds. I'm going to have to try and keep pausing this. Yeah, I have Bolg doing the 15 birds of 5 fir trees. Does he actually say, what shall we do with the funny little... Oh, I do. I forgot that I had that. I forgot that I kept that in. Yeah, that was I wanted to try and do another reference to the song. I didn't want, you're not going to have Azog in this movie and his band of orcs actually jumping into song and singing as they're burning the trees down. That wouldn't really fit tonally with this film, I don't think. But I wanted to reference that song. So, he does it in a mocking way in this way. He just kind of says it matter of fact. I don't know whether to keep that in. What do we think? It's a bit fan servicey, I suppose, but I could. He's taking the piss out of them. They're actually pine trees, though, which is interesting. But that's even a mistake in the book, because they mention that Gandalf climbed to the top of a giant Christmas tree, which, even in the context of The Hobbit, that then brings into the notion of Christmas, that, which is a Christian holiday in the realm of Middle-earth, which doesn't really fit. But they all jump into different trees. I think some go into fir trees, some go into pine trees, and then Gandalf goes into like a giant Christmas tree. But then they still sing 15 birds in 5 fir trees, and it's, they're not all fir trees. I don't know. I might keep that in. Maybe. But one thing I am keeping in is the motivation. So I still have this. Do you smell it? The sense of fear. Oh, it has. Hang on, it's right after this bit. Not even the wizard. Yeah, there we go. Your kin slew my father Azog because, as I've said, like Azog's character is renamed to Bolg, and that's his motivation in the book. Really, is that Bolg's father Azog was killed at the Battle of Azanulbizar, actually by Dane Ironfoot. So, because his beef is mostly with Thorin in this and not really Ironfoot, I just have him say, "Your kin slew my father Azog." And he doesn't specifically say that Ironfoot killed them, because then his beef would be with Ironfoot and he'd want to go and kill Billy Connolly's character in the film rather than focusing his efforts on Thorin. So just keeping it vague like that, it does still fit in with the book in many ways. But right, let's jump through. So all this is going to be the same. All this is going to be the same. The bridge between these two. Oh, I added some rotoscoping of some of the eagles in this shot, didn't I? That's right. It's right around here. Let's see how this looks now. Yeah, so that was a bit of a roto. Yeah, you can kind of tell that that's a roto there. Maybe that eagle swooping down. It's a little bit unrefined. It's not awful though. I think that's fine. I think I could get away with that one. And that one's a roto as well. Probably a little bit more obvious behind Bilbo there. Because it was just weird when there's shots with none of the eagles, because the eagles are dropping them all off, so I felt like they needed to be there. That's not too bad. And then I added this other one on the right-hand side here coming into land. I think it does go a little bit glitchy if I remember rightly. Yeah, you can see some of the wings there. But again, not awful. I could probably keep that in. And then this is sort of a homage, really, to the beginning of the book where Thorin's first introduced into Bag End, where he kind of falls in with the company and he feels very undignified. So he's on the floor and they're like, "Get up, you fucker." And he kind of like throws them off, and then they all start laughing. So that was kind of a reference to the beginning of the book there. I think that's all fine. I might see if I can reuse some of those shots a little bit, although the quality does look like it drops. I'm gonna have to get After Effects if not, and do all of that rotoing on the birds again. So, and then I think I went into stock footage here, which might not be so great quality. Yeah, I tried to match the time of day with a color correction. Yeah, and you have gone, so there is a house. It's not far from here where we might take refuge, and I think there's a few shots actually. So there's that one. Yeah, I think this was actually the location where they filmed Beorn's house from. I think I managed to find all this on YouTube, but like, I mean, the quality doesn't match for a start, I don't think. It's not awful though. I think I could maybe get away with using that again. And then we go into the actual film there again for that shot. We have the extended scene here of the 2x2, so that's fine. The quality on the footage actually picks up here a little bit. During this moment in the film, there's a little bit of new voiceover that I added, which just reinforms that Gandalf already know who Sauron is and that the Necromancer is Sauron. So there's no and ifs or buts about it at this point. The Necromancer is Sauron, and Gandalf has known this for a very, very long time at this point. We get the Mirkwood scene. I actually don't remember how I did Mirkwood. I know that I have the stream in there still, and the White Heart. I think I might have darkened it a little bit, the color correction. We have the spiders. So that's all going to be the same. And then we have the barrel escape, which I've removed the orcs from. And then I thought, right, well, there's certain shots where you can see arrows hitting the barrels from when the orcs are firing arrows at them. And I thought, I need to change that to the elves, but I don't want the elves being murderous assholes where they're actually trying to hit and kill the dwarves. So I thought, right, I need arrows being fired at the barrels. The elves need to be the ones doing it, not the orcs. And it needs to be in a non-lethal way. So to what end? Why would they be firing arrows? And I think here I have Tauriel off screen say, like, sink the barrels or something, I think she says. Yeah, that's right. So she commands them to sink the barrels, and then you have the shots of the yeah, the elves like firing at them. Significantly cut down, and this is the last time that we see Legolas until the very end of the movie. We then get our intermission. We're into the next act of the film. Right, thoughts on this? So we spend a little bit of time in Lake Town here, significantly cut down. He fills them up with fish. We remove the Alfred scene at the checkpoint. He just takes them straight back to the house, and they get their new clothes and rags and whatnot. He says that the best weapons are kept in the armory. He goes off, and we have the poem with some new voiceover that someone did for me. They drop the weapons, and then they're taken to the Master of Lake Town. Now, some characters that I really want to get rid of in this edit, if I can, are Bard's family. They serve absolutely no point. I know in the book he does have a son at some point who becomes king and actually dies at the... It actually is his son or his grandson? Might be his grandson that dies. I can't remember at the Lonely Mountain during the War of the Ring. Yeah, it's King Brand, isn't it? So yeah, it'd be his grandson. It'd be Bard's grandson. So he does have a son at some point, but I do want to get rid of just his family in general if I can. They serve no point in this edit that I've got. They are really just there for Bard to try and save periodically, and that's it. Now, the issue with that is that I could get rid of them, and the way that I could get rid of them, this is sort of how the edit would be structured. You'd have him smuggle them in via fish barrels. You'd have them walking through the town, and then you'd have the extended edition where Braga, the city guard, finds them in the street and arrests them, and then you'd have to cut straight to this scene where Braga brings them to the Master of Lake Town. Now, the issue with that is that it's going to go from, let me just get back there again. It's going to go from this time of day, which is very bright and, bit overcast, but definitely daytime. The market's in full swing. You're then going to have them get arrested, and then all of a sudden we're going to cut to nighttime, and it's snowing, and we've got flaming torches out. That effectively gets rid of Bard's family in that scene. You can easily remove them out of the bit where Smaug attacks. You don't need them there because I don't have his son bringing him the black arrow. I don't do any of that. So that removes them out of that scene. I feel like you could pretty effectively remove them out of the shores of the Long Lake. I think you could get rid of them during the actual Battle of Dale. And that's it. They don't really accomplish anything in the actual film or do anything. So the issue is the continuity, is the time of day. It suddenly goes into nighttime. And then also the fact that the company have changed clothes. You could maybe argue that the prison system, they had to process them, that they're prison rags that they have, and that's where the costume changes. What do you guys think? Do you think it's worth having all of these scenes? So you'd have the bit where, he goes to Bard's family offers them the weapons. The weapons aren't good enough. This is kind of a nice scene, though. Nice reference to the book. The vast halls of treasure, the king beneath the mountain shall come into his own, all of that stuff. You'd have to get rid of that too. You'd get rid of this bit in the armory, and you'd just get them straight to the Master of Lake Town. What do we think to that? Do we think it's worth keeping all that in so we spend a little bit longer in Lake Town, or do you think that for the sake of removing Bard's family, that could be done? All of this next stuff I'm pretty happy with, I think, for the most part. Let's see. Yeah, so you have more of Durin's day here because it's with some color correction here. Durin's day is meant to be when the last moon of autumn and the first moon of winter appear in the sky together. They mentioned that earlier in the film. So I think this was inspired by another. Yeah, so this is like color corrected here. You can see the saturation, and there's sort of like an orangey glow to match the sunlight here. Repurposed ending from the first movie here with the knocking of the thrush. Stand by the Greystone when the thrush knocks. So I've got that in there. And then the dwarves are still meant to be in the shot here. I guess they're just off screen. And then there you have, I think I should, yeah. So like the sun and the moon in the sky together. That was definitely inspired by another edit. I forget which one did that, but that is what Durin's day is. There's no the dwarves retreat and give up and say that they're going to head home. And it's not just the moonlight that shows up, it is the sun and the moon in the sky together happening. Dirty Sanchez says his family and Master of Lake Town is just pain for me, to be honest. I've really cut the Master of Lake Town down. He is still Stephen Fry, but he's more functional in the story now, and then he's just written out and that's it. So I'm going to keep that the same. But yeah, it's really just the family, because I feel at this point in the edit, the family really just serves to have them have a costume change where they get into their sort of Lake Town rags, their costume change for the second act of the film. That's about it, really, isn't it? I suppose you have the poem of the King of Carven Stone, which is quite nice and a reference to the book. So I like all of that stuff, but that's it. After that point, as I say, like, they don't play a part in the attack on Lake Town. They're just there for Bard to try and save every now and then. You could just have Bard be on his own, saving his people, saving his city. I don't really feel like you need the family in there. So that's why I want to get rid of them, but by removing them, I do think it fucks up the continuity a little bit and the flow maybe of Lake Town. We don't perhaps spend as much time there as we could. Maybe we should move on from Lake Town a bit quicker, but let me know what you guys think. Maybe I'll do like I used to do on my old Vimeo pages. I'll edit some different versions, and provided the copyright's okay on YouTube, I could upload some of those changes that I've done and see what you guys think, and just go back to the old school of getting your opinion on how things flow. But I do think the family could be very, very easily removed, and that's something that I'm mulling over that I might do for it. This is all really good stuff. There's no Philly, Killy, Bofa, and Oin during this scene, because technically in the film they stay behind in Lake Town at this point. They are meant to be part of the crew there, but I have to work with the footage that I have. Let's see. You've got all of this bit. I added in this scene with the thrush here, didn't I? Because the thrush follows Bilbo in. Yeah, so after Bilbo rounds the corner, how does the roto look on this now? Not great, but I think that's doable. I'd be fine with leaving that in right there, because the thrush follows him in because it has to see the weak point on Smaug's scale, and then it flies to Lake Town and it relays this information to Bard, just like the book. This scene, I think I changed the color correction a little bit to make the gold a little bit more vibrant, and I think that is something actually that they have changed in the 4K footage for the film, is that they've really gone in and they fucked around with the saturation and really insanely upped the saturation in this scene. In the actual cut of this, the gold actually kind of looks more silver. So I boosted the saturation in this scene just to make it look a little bit more gold, but they've really overdone it, I think, with the saturation in the 4K release of this film. I will say, actually, that the footage that I will be using will still be 1080p quality. The reason being is that the 4K footage, I can only find the extended edition available. I cannot find the theatrical versions in 4K. I can't find the available footage for that, but I can find 1080p footage of both the extended and the theatrical. So, yeah, I'm going to keep with that, but I will have 5.1 surround sound audio this time rather than just stereo as it currently is. So I'm pretty happy with the Smaug scene. I think I might have to watch through it again just to see how the audio is. We skip all the molten gold crap, of course, and we just go straight to the good stuff, which is him heading to Lake Town to try and destroy it, which of course he does. Let's see how the thrush shot holds up, shall we? Yeah, so the voiceover here from Bard, where he says he has a monologue about the Black Arrow. You have served me well. You have never failed me, and always I have recovered you. I had you from my father, and he from of old. If ever you came from the great forge of the king under the mountain, go now and speed well, or whatever it is. It's something like that. That I actually took from Bluefax's theatrical audiobook of his impression of Bard there. But again, with AI now, fingers crossed, there might be a Luke Evans voice, a Bard the Bowman voice that I can run through AI and perhaps get it a little bit closer. One thing I don't like here is that Bard's meant to have just a normal bow and arrow, but the only footage I've got to work with here is where he's got the bowstring pulled back. I might see if AI can help me out with that a little bit and maybe just, bring his arms down, or maybe I can edit it where it's just his face and the AI can fill in the rest of the body. Because he shouldn't be like this. He doesn't use it as a ballista to fire with in this. He just has a normal bow and arrow. Let's see. Where's the thrush? This is right before. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, that still looks fine. That still looks fine. I'll allow that. I'll keep that, I think, with the thrush. And then I think I even have it sort of fly away a little bit here in the distance, maybe. Do you see it sort of fly away? Yeah, you just see like a little... Oh, that is blinking. You'll miss it. Let's see that little black speck just to the left of the tower. Very, very tiny. I wonder if my cursor will show it like this right here. Yeah. Anyway, all this is staying. All this is fine. Okay, one scene I am getting rid of. Absolutely 100% getting rid of. Shores of the Long Lake. JX is going to hate me for this. He's going to really hate me for it. So I actually, in my edit, did show the fate of the Master of Lake Town. And I used footage from the movie Ironclad, because it always stuck with me. Paul Giamatti's character at the very end of the film sort of is banished and is in the swamps, is in the wasteland, and dies of dysentery, I think it is. Oh, yeah, that looks really bad now, actually, in hindsight. Look at that. I tried to do an early face swap on Paul Giamatti with a JPEG of Stephen Fry's face. Yeah, that looks really fucking bad. Now, the last time that you see the Master of Lake Town is him sailing away from Fire and Water when Smaug attacks. So I'm like, well, where did he get this horse and cart from? But he does look really cold and chilled to the bone, and it shows that, he's struggling through the mud. And I added this gold in separately here as well as a separate layer, because the original film is just that stone chest there with that goblet, and was that like some lace or some embroidery or something? But I added in the gold there a little bit. I kind of like that because it's from the book. It shows that he does get deserted in the wastes and dies of starvation, deserted by all of his people. And that was kind of a reference to that, to show what actually happened to him. He doesn't get crushed under the body of Smaug, but it does look like it's from another film. The face swap there really didn't work, so I am probably going to remove that scene, and I'm just going to have the where is he? Where is the master? Halfway down the Kelduin with all of that coin, I don't doubt, and that's it. The Master of Lake Town just escaped with Alfred with all the coin. And if you read the book, then you know eventually what becomes of the Master of Lake Town. I don't think I really need to show it, perhaps at this point in the story. Yeah, dragon sickness stuff here. I might downplay a lot of it, where he's not really showing signs of an actual curse. I think the big scene for that is, I will not part with a single coin. It's like really over the top and overdone. So I'll probably get rid of that. Honestly, all of this stuff, it's pretty good. It's pretty okay. We gear up for the battle. Bilbo takes the... So this is sort of like a mix of the theatrical and the extended stuff here. Keeping all of this stuff. I really hate CGI Billy Connolly. I really fucking hate it. So I don't have the... Oh my god, look at that. It looks terrible. It looks so bad. It looked bad then. It looks even worse now. Look at it. It's like a scene from fucking Beowulf. What were they thinking? They had Billy Connolly in costume, and it looked great. And they had him with the red axe as well. I was tempted to see if AI could help me out with that and try and replace all of these shots with Dane. and just sort of like edit in a red axe and see if the motion stayed the same. But I think that's going to be too difficult to do. I don't think AI is quite there yet, unfortunately. So they gear up for war. We have the orcs show up. I have this scene. The quality is going to take a dip because it's from the deleted scenes, but it's the acorn scene, and Bard kind of has a moment of weakness. Yeah, so you can kind of see that the footage doesn't look awful, but maybe just visually doesn't quite match all of the other stuff. So I think it is a nice scene. It gives Bilbo a bit more focus in the battle and sort of reinstills their confidence a little bit. And I quite like this scene. I don't have him burying the acorn here, because I saved that acorn for later. It's one of the final shots in the movie, which I still like. Probably okay. Yeah. So when I say I want to remove some of the dragon sickness stuff, I'm really just like referring to this bit right here. So in my edit, I have this slowed down. Oh yeah, that looks really bad. That looks really bad. So that shot is taken from earlier in the film where the dwarves make it back to the mountain and Bilbo explains that Thorin's been down there for days. And actually in this shot, I don't know if you can see my cursor on screen. Right up here, you have Bilbo, Fili, Kili, Bofur, and Oin looking down at Thorin. I masked them out by darkening that sort of doorway there. And then I added this gold in over the top of it, I think. Did I? I actually can't remember. Oh, no! Let's get it back to where it was. Shit. Oh, yeah, it was right around here, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think some of the CG, not the CGI, the rotoing in this scene is going to be really shitty. We're about to find out. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, that looks like ass. That looks really fucking bad. Again, 3 years with hindsight. Doesn't look great. Look at that. Look how glitchy that looks. This shot didn't look too bad, I don't think. Overall, it's kind of slowed down a little bit. A little bit of haze going on, but that could be like the dragon sickness thing. Yeah, that roto doesn't look too bad where he's on the gold there. That's kind of fine. What a bit... Oh, this is going to be awful. This is going to be really bad. Just sort of preparing myself for it. It's when he throws the crown off. Yeah. So the gold was mostly made up of the ending shot from An Unexpected Journey, where Smaug sort of snorts and bursts out of the gold. And then I had to kind of layer this with the background. I think this is a couple of background shots, actually, of the rest of the mountain. Throws the crown. So I had to roto Thorin from that shot. And when the crown hits, I think I had to add a bit of like gold cascading down. Yeah, that looks really bad. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it looks really naff. Hang on, let me try and play that scene in full. No, why do I keep clicking that? Let me get it back to where it was. Right before that. Just a couple of seconds. Try not to get... There we go. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm thinking if I get rid of that scene entirely, because it is kind of bullshit, it's just old Thorin suddenly snaps back to his senses. I think it could be important for the film story-wise, in the context of the film story rather than the book. Because, you know, he's all very, I'm greedy, and then all of a sudden, off-screen, he suddenly walks out, you know, literally in the very next scene, is, you know, he walks out and he's the good old Thorin Oakenshield again as we know him, and he's had that realization off screen. So at least as I've got it in this scene, we do see his transformation on screen, but that transformation is still very haphazardly done and very quick, I think. So I don't know. I am thinking of maybe getting rid of the whole dragon sickness thing, or at least downplaying it considerably. Also, can we just talk about how fucking low res that bell looks like in the background? Like, my god, that CGI does not look finished. And it probably wasn't. That looks really shitty. Oh, man. Man alive. These films. So we still have all of this. I'm thinking of getting rid of some of these scenes, maybe with the change in soundtrack. I actually do think they are quite heroic, and it really gets that fun sense of like, yeah, we're back in the fight. This is fun. So, I have Bomber doing all this stuff, which it's a little bit ridiculous, but the music is quite upbeat and kind of fun. I don't know about this whole throwing of the axe repeatedly into an orc's head. I don't know. We have them reuniting. I'm going to get rid of Dane's voiceover here. Nothing against the guy who did the voice for me. Again, like a massive thank you to the guy who helped me out with it. It didn't quite match as effectively as I would have liked. So I think I am just going to remove that scene. I had right around this point him actually confirming to the audience that it was Ironfoot that killed Azog. When Thorin says, "We're going to take out their leader," I have Ironfoot saying, was it Bolg of the North? I slew his father at Moria. And yeah, didn't quite have the effect I wanted. Unless there's someone else out there that can do a bang up Billy Connolly impression, but I don't think so. And I did try AI voice on Billy Connolly as well, and unfortunately, because of the very broad Scottish accent, AI is not quite there yet where it can match accents in that way. Or, well, regional accents like that. So yeah, then we just have all of this. And I did actually watch this whole second part of the film a few days ago. And I do think that the ending battle really does drag on. It's cut down considerably, but I mean, the battle kind of kicks off when the orcs show up, right? So it's kind of around here. Let's just round it up. Let's just say the 4-hour mark. 20 minutes later, we're still fighting at Ravenhill. 25 minutes later, we're still at Ravenhill. We're still killing shit. 27 minutes later, we're still killing shit. 29 minutes. And, he dies right there. 32 minutes. That's pretty much 32 minutes of almost unbroken fighting. There's a couple of moments punctuated in there, like Bilbo rallying Gandalf and Bard back into the fight. There's Thorin coming to his senses and just regrouping with the dwarves. There's a couple of moments like that, but for all intents and purposes, it's half hour of constant fighting. And by the time you get to Ravenhill, you really feel the effects of it. I was checked the fuck out. Even during the battle of like Dale, I was like, okay, this is really dragging its feet now. So that's why I thought, well, maybe I could toy with the idea of Bilbo going to Ravenhill, sort of like running away from the battle and getting knocked on the head, and then we come back and, well, we'd cut back to this scene, wouldn't we? We'd cut back to this shot right here. The eagles are coming. We'd cut to this shot, and then we just have that scene like right there, like the confirmation that Thorin has killed Bolg off screen, which I think is really shit. I don't like that. Yeah, I guess. Actually, I could add AI in here, right? And I could get rid of that sword. And now with AI, what it is, I could just take that JPEG and I could just have camera slowly zooms in as bear circles orc on the floor. And I could have like a bear there, implying that off screen, Beorn the bear did kill Bolg in this shot. But we don't get to see it, and it's really anticlimactic. So I feel like you've got to have the Ravenhill stuff in there. But it is annoying. I feel like you needed the Ravenhill stuff to happen in the same location as to where all the other battle stuff going is. I think it's a really missed opportunity in the film that we never concern ourselves with what's happening with any of the other dwarves, with Ironfoot, with all of the people on the ground as to what's going on down there, and we isolate everyone in this quiet location away from everything. I think that was a missed opportunity. I feel like it should have all taken place on that battlefield that we just saw, so that the whole final fighting act takes place. It's basically one act. It's not the same thing happening in almost two separate acts. You've got all the stuff happening at the mountain, and then we kind of go into the final act, or the second final act, which is all the Ravenhill stuff. So I don't know. I've tried edits before where Bilbo runs off to save his own skin, but he comes across as really cowardly, and I feel kind of ruins his character and what we've seen from his character at that point before, at least in the context of the film. And also, I think, you know, just having your big bad die and Thorin also be mortally wounded off screen, I think it is pretty anticlimactic to do that and maybe doesn't work. But it would cut the runtime down. I mean, as I said, that's like half hour of screen time there just dedicated to the battle, and I don't think you need a battle for that long. I think you could easily get away with like a 15 to 20 minute one. So I don't know. I'll try and cut it down, but I think as it is, I think I've got to keep Legolas in there. I think I've got to kill. I've got to kill Tauriel. Yeah, I've got to keep Tauriel in there still, and Chris getting back to Thorin, and yeah, it's just a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff that I wish I could change, but I feel beholden to it. But it would cut the runtime down. All of this is good. There are some shots that I want to change at the funeral. Let's see. There's a shot of Beorn and Thrain. Oh, yeah, so that's one of the shots I want to change. That roto looks fucking terrible. It looks so bad. I think that mountain background is actually taken from the God of War video game, because I couldn't find a good dwarven background that matched. That really doesn't look good. Really doesn't look good. But that's one of the things I can hopefully change, maybe either with a different roto or maybe AI can help with that. But it's this one in particular. That looks terrible. Look at how bad that highlight is. That outline is around Thranduil. Shockingly shit. What I had to do was, that shot in the original film is you've got Beorn on the left and then you've got Radagast on the right. So I had to kind of merge two separate shots together. One's from the extended edition Battle of the Five Armies, which is the Beorn stuff, and the Thranduil shot there. And the background is actually taken from the woodland realm in Desolation of Smaug. Now I thought, because it's darkened enough and you've got those like flames in the background, those lanterns, you could infer that that looks like a dwarvish cavern, which matches the location. And then there's some kind of obscured statue that Beorn's stood in front of. Really, the background looks terrible in front of Beorn, behind Beorn as well, but that's actually how it is in the final film. But that Thranduil shot there looks really, really bad. If I oh yeah, that's, you got all the haziness around him. I'm hoping that AI can fix that. If not, I might just have to remove that scene. Let's see. What else have we got? Then go into the prologue of the gems being distributed. We've got some more Dane voiceover here, which I'm probably going to remove. This next scene, it's all the roto that just looks absolutely... Oh, God. I'm embarrassed to show this. Oh, look how bad that looks. Oh, that looks so shit. So, me and JX have been working on some rotos for that. Well, JX, really, he's been doing all the hard work. He's the one who's actually got the AI means and sends me various different drafts that he's doing, which I really appreciate him doing that for me. So we're going to keep trying with that. I think AI is probably going to be the best route for that one. Bath Time says, actually, this might sound proper dumb, but how do you go about watching these edits? That's not dumb at all. In the link of this video, one of the first videos that I did on my channel, where I talk about the edit from a couple of years ago, you can find the links there. But I pretty much post the link to my edit in every single video that I upload here on YouTube. Because yes, I am that vain. But it's especially in the description of this video, you can find them. So there's a Google Drive link, which is probably the most reliable, which is where which is what I'm doing all this from tonight. There's a link on Mega, which I haven't checked in a while. I don't know if it's still on there. And then there's also a link to a website called Firemerk Studios, and you can watch it on there. Let's see. So we have this. Okay, this is something to note. So at this point, when we've seen the interior of the throne room here, the bridge is completely broken. if I remember that, 440-33. I'll just take it back to when Balin is having a conversation with Thorin about the Arkenstone, which might be before this scene. Yeah. So we got a good shot of it right there. The bridge is totally destroyed. Look, it's very zigzaggy. It's very broken. It's very disheveled. As is the throne behind Thorin right there. Well, that was a good. So you can see how there's like a huge part just cloven out of the throne right there. Now, if I go back to where we were, which was 440-33, almost. This is a good enough shot. I tried to replicate that in the background, so you can see the throne. I've taken that same chunk out of it, or tried to replicate it as close as I could. It might not 100% line up, but at least visually you can see it. But the bridge is totally a-okay. The bridge looks absolutely fine. So I guess in very short time they fixed the bridge, but not the throne. I needed to destroy the throne because the Arkenstone is in Thorin's keeping at this point on his tomb. It doesn't get put back into the throne itself. This shot was actually a pain in the fucking ass because I had to get rid of Thorin Oakenshield, who's actually stood right next to the throne on this side in the actual film. I think I had to complete this dwarf right here who's standing guard. I think I had to take like an arm from this guard and put it on this guy right here. This giant sort of block of stone on the right-hand side that you can see that doesn't really match with anything else. That's taken from something else. I think that's taken from the earlier Balin shot, and I've had to put that in the background. But the bridge is completely repaired. I guess the... I could try and maybe destroy the bridge a little bit more, especially when you get this shot over the shoulder of Thranduil approaching the throne, which I think I still have in. Let me just play this real quick. There, so like in the background, you're probably going to have to try and destroy that bridge a little bit more if you're going to try and make it match 100%. Or you could just go with the very on-the-nose and bullshit example that bridges have been mended between the dwarves and the elves at this point, and this is a moment of unity. So the throne may not have been repaired, but the bridges have, and that's a bullshit explanation. I'll try and fix the... Well, no, I won't try and fix the bridge. I'll try and unfix the bridge. I'll try and destroy the shit out of that bridge to make it look a bit more visually consistent. But yeah. We have this scene here. I think we do have Bard with his kids here, don't we? Yeah. Like these shots here. This might be a bit tricky. I guess I'm going to have to shorten the song a little bit, but I could get rid of his two daughters. I could get rid of his son, and I could literally just have that shot there of Bard. Yeah. Here's a shot that I have with Beorn in the background. I think I took that from the behind the scenes funeral scene because he was on a green screen, and I just have him kind of stood there. He's a little bit glitchy, but he's not too bad. He's just serving his purpose there. He's a little bit out of focus there on the right hand side. You can see him next to that piece of rock. And right, we're almost done, guys. We're almost done. So this is footage I've taken from another film. I think it's, what was it called? Into the Wild? What was that CGI dog movie? So this kind of wraps up Beorn's storyline. Someone actually did say that they like these multiple endings that I have that kind of match the book. In the book, they go back and they actually stay... they actually say goodbye to the Elven King on the borders of Mirkwood, but I don't really have the footage for that. Then they go back and stay with Beorn for Christmas time. And then they leave there. So this is kind of harkening back to that a little bit. It doesn't look like winter time, but I've got to work with footage that I have available, right? So this says goodbye to Beorn's character. And then they travel back to Rivendell. And we stay there for a bit, which is what I go into here. And this sort of wraps up the whole Necromancer story here. We get this information in the film at exactly the same time as we do in the film. We find out about it at the very, very end. Let's just freeze on this frame of Christopher Lee because he's fucking awesome. I then repurposed the scene from in the first film here, where we have Why the Halfling, and now that he's shown his true courage at the end of the journey, this is where Gandalf opens up about it. The issue is we get no Bilbo scene during this whole moment, and Rivendell was such a big deal to him at the beginning of the film. Part of me is tempted to just remove all of these endings and just, like the actual theatrical version of Battle of the Five Armies, have Bilbo leave, and then we get to the Shire, and we're there, and we're done, and we just infer that he's had this whole journey back home. But then some people do like the multiple endings that I have and fleshing things out and keeping it closer to the book. One bit that I do like here is that we momentarily travel back to the troll horde here, and Gandalf looks down and sees the chest that was buried earlier and gets an idea. This is all reused footage, but at this point, like 4 hours of movie have gone by, so hopefully people don't notice. And then the next shot is Bilbo holding that chest under his arm that's just been dug up, which I think was actually filmed but was deleted at the last minute, unfortunately, but we just don't see any footage of that. All this is fine. This is pretty much the ending. Repurpose the ending here, because in the actual film, he looks down at the ring. Hey, JX, do you recognize that hand? So this is a shot that will need to be changed. I wanted to harken back to the acorn and it being a symbol of him returning home, him making it home safe and remembering everything that happened. And I thought that was an important totem, really, for Bilbo to hang on to and keep throughout the rest of the movie. So JX very kindly filmed his hand, acquired an acorn from somewhere. I still don't know where you got that acorn from, and shot that in front of a green screen. The floor was a Google Images floor that kind of looked like the floor of a Hobbit home from what I could see. Now, unfortunately, like during this shot, it's a little bit hazy around the fingers. The green screen wasn't 100%, and my rotoring skills are terrible. So AI is going to help us with that. And there is actually an AI shot that can have an acorn in an open hand like that. So it's just going to be AI, and it's going to work, and it's going to have to do. We then cut to, I'm going to have to check the time on this to make sure that I got it right. 59 years later. I think I worked it out with the appendices in the back of the Lord of the Rings book, The Tale of Years, that it is actually 59 years from when Bilbo arrives home and from when we pick up the events of the Lord of the Rings. I think it is actually 59 years, technically. It's not 60. 60 is cleaner, though, and I know why they probably said it was 60 years in the actual film, because it just rounds it up. It's a less of a random number. But I think if I am being a stickler for detail, I think it does work itself out to 59 years later. We then go into, we get our cameo. We tie back into the Lord of the Rings here. We get a bit of an epilogue to show that Erebor is, the fires are, the forges have been refired, the rivers of gold are flowing once again, which is kind of why I don't want to get rid of that earlier scene that I mentioned of the King of Carven Stone and whatnot. We then fade back in. We come back to the Shire. We cut to our ending here. And yeah, there we go. And then it's black and white credits because I couldn't really make it work with the Battle of the Five Armies credits because you have all illustrations behind it. If I'm removing certain characters' names from the cast or reordering them, there's no way that I can take those drawings from behind and cover it up. So that's why I went for credits like this. So yeah, that's kind of it. So if I just stop the screen real quick and we bring it back to solo, there we go. They're kind of all the updates I'm going to make. Most of it is going to remain intact, but I am going to have to rethink about some things. And really the intention for this is just to have more consistent video and visual quality, is to remove some of those really terrible rotoscope shots that I've got and replace them with AI. If that helps, if it still looks a bit wonky, then just finding a way to remove them entirely. And really just to condense the runtime down a little bit. I always saw that project that I did as like a super extended edition with everything that I kind of wanted in there. This time I'm going to be a little bit more critical. I'm going to be like, does this actually further the story of The Hobbit in any fulfilling way? If not, well, then it can probably be deleted. Do we need to know the fate of the Master of Lake Town? No, we can get that across in dialogue, you know, and it keeps the video quality consistent without cutting to another movie. And just things like that. So I'm going to rethink some certain scenes, and that's what I'm going to be working on for the next couple of weeks while I've got a break from work. And this is probably going to be ongoing for a good few months, I would say. But not 8 years like the original project was, because I know what I'm doing. I have a template to work from. I've just got to refine it a little bit more now. So Bath Time says it's an ISO file or similar. Yeah, JX, you beat me to it. Yeah, MP4. I'm pretty sure it's an MP4 that it was exported as. Bath Time says one thing that would be fun is if we got everything in Middle Earth and did a dual com as an MP4 you can play whilst watching the Hobbit Fellowship. Yeah, I mean, it would be cool. Yeah, everything in Middle Earth. What do you mean there? Sorry, dual com as an MP4 you can play. The thing is, like, I can't really play anything out properly on here because Warner Brothers are awful for copyright. I already have a strike on my channel from something else, which was when I did. So that's like, was it the Swedish Lord of the Rings, Sagan om Ringen? Well, me and JX did that actually, didn't we? And yeah, we that got me a strike on my channel, so I need to be very, very careful. Bath Time says it could only be more on the nose if the bridge was on fire. A mistake, thankfully corrected in a spirit by Game of Thrones. And oh yeah, when the dragon burnt the throne in Game of Thrones. Yeah, that was. I'm trying to forget that whole season. It's not going very well. Bath Time says, since being exposed to your take on Lord of the Rings ending, I'm interested what you've done with Hobbit. Yeah, so someone actually on Firemerk Studios website for this Hobbit edit, they said that, well, first off, they said they really enjoyed the edit, which was great. And then they asked me, they said, are you planning on doing one for Lord of the Rings? Because I'd really love to see how you try and make a more book accurate version of Lord of the Rings. And I did actually start that project a while back. I'm not going to give away the name of what I'd call it now, but I did start work on it. So my focus is going to be on the Hobbit for right now, getting this updated version out there and getting that released. And I feel like for at least a considerable while, unless some better quality footage comes out, that will be sort of my swan song as to editing The Hobbit. But then I would like to move on to other projects. As I've mentioned, there is an idea for a Lord of the Rings edit out there that I would like to do. War of the Rohirrim, I've got an idea for that, but that's going to be a lot of AI. So JX, I might be hitting you up for a few more shots on that, mate, or creating new ones from whole cloth. So yeah, I'd like to do a lot more Middle Earth edits and just really other edits in general. It's going to be nice getting back into the whole editing thing because I have missed it. It is a pastime that I really do miss. It's a good sort of stress reliever. It's creative, it's fun, and if I'm getting snowed under with a lot of other things, it's nice to just get something in the timeline, get something in the editing suite, and even just chip away at a few scenes. You know, it really does help. I find that it calms me down, and it's something that I've been doing for years, even way before The Hobbit. Even when I was in high school, I was doing sort of fan edits and little clips of things like that. Nothing officially released, but it was just a hobby more than anything. Bath Time said, would you ever do a calling, Chris? I'd be up for something, but it's your show, innit? Yeah, I'd be down for that. I mean, I mean, you've been around here for ages, Bath Time. Like, you know, it's cool, you know, you're jumping in. So I'd be comfortable with you jumping on. I'd have to police it just in case it opened up. You know, a lot of people saying like, oh, we want to jump in now. We want to jump in now. And sometimes you never know what you're going to get, right? So, but we could chat about it before. We could do like, I don't know if like Skype's still a thing or Zoom or something, so we can chat a little bit before and sort of see how we, you know, bounce off each other. But yeah, I'd be down for doing that. That'd be cool. Absolutely. Bath Time says, so you watch the films together, etc., and record your audio as an MP4. Someone can sync up at home. Yeah, so I was actually talking with Everything in Middle Earth to see if he'd be down for doing something like that, because we've kind of missed it now, but we're still in the same month of it. It's the 10th, and we're just past the 10th anniversary of Battle of the Five Armies, and we were talking about either doing a video discussion of sort of the Hobbit trilogy 10 years on and our thoughts on it, if they've changed, as now we've had Rings of Power and War of the Rohirrim. Have we gone back to the Hobbit with a newfound reverence for it or something? Or we were going to do a commentary on the extended edition of Battle of the Five Armies, and that would have been where, you can sync up at home and we watch it all together. So I'm not ruling that out. Maybe if we can fit that in at some point, that would be cool to do. Bath Time says, I still cannot believe Amazon and Warner Brothers haven't realized the thing we need is Lobelia and the real ending of the Lord of the Rings instead of animes. That would be cool, man. Yeah, that'd be cool. I guess I can sort of give away what I was planning on doing with the ending of sort of my Lord of the Rings edit. So Saruman doesn't die, obviously, in the book at the voice of Saruman. When they parley with him at Isengard, he doesn't get stabbed by Grima, and he doesn't fall off the tower, and he doesn't get impaled on the water wheel, and he doesn't die there because he goes on to enslave the Shire. Now, I don't have footage to effectively do that. There's only a few little behind-the-scenes shots of the scouring of the Shire. I've got no Christopher Lee stuff. I've got no Frodo stuff. I've got no Hobbit uprising, so I can't do the scouring of the Shire. But one thing I was thinking of doing was keeping the bit where they parley with Saruman from the extended scene, but removing him getting stabbed in his death scene. So I keep him alive. I have the bit where they talk in the extended scene there, but I keep him alive. And that's it. And then we can infer that, they get back to the Shire and everything's fine. But there is a 4-year time jump to when Frodo leaves for the Grey Havens. So, although we don't see it, we could maybe infer that at some point the scouring of the Shire did happen in some way off screen in that 4-year time period. I don't know if I like the idea of that, but it's kind of what Philippa Boyne said in the commentary for the film, where they skip over the Old Forest and Tom Bombadil and the Barrow Downs, and she says, well, we cut from Buckleberry Ferry and we cut straight to Bree. So technically, it could have happened in that point. This could be like months down the line that we haven't seen, and it could have all happened off screen. What do you think? I think, in all honesty, I should probably just keep the scene where he gets stabbed and he falls off and he dies, just for the sake of, the continuity of the rest of the film. But it is an idea that I had to try and just keep him alive and just pretend that it maybe happened off camera. Bath Time says, yeah, I do a United fan channel. Oh, nice. Only 4K. That's a lot of subs, man. Congratulations. 4K is not bad. Congratulations on that. And doing open call content is a minefield. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. But I trust you, man. I'll check some of your stuff out, and we'll have a chat about it for the new year. Tobias says, it's eternally confusing why The Hobbit even has an extended edition. In Lord of the Rings, there were close story differences that justify the 2 separate versions with The Hobbit. Yeah, I think overall the theatrical versions are definitely the way to go with The Hobbit. I think they are the stronger versions. I think the good stuff that you lose from the extended editions, which is quite few and far between, but there are some scenes that are nice to have. You don't lose much from not having them. I think the main one is, I think theatrical for Unexpected Journey and Desolation of Smaug, definitely theatrical versions for that. But I would say extended version for Battle of the Five Armies. Yeah, it does add some crazy fucking battle shit in there, but it does add stuff in like the funeral scene of Thorin, which how that wasn't in the theatrical version is beyond me. And I think that the extended version is overall the superior version. You get like a terrible, awful ending to Alfred's character, which is one of the worst scenes ever. But it is at least a tie-up to his character, and he doesn't, just hog all the screen time and then just disappear and does nothing. at least that storyline is tied up somewhat. There is an explanation for the goats. You get the funeral scene at the end, which, as I say, should have been in the actual version. Yeah. The English Scotsman says, wait, behind the scenes footage exists for the Scouring of the Shire? Yeah, it's more sort of like B-roll stuff. There's a few extra stuff of the orcs kind of rampaging through at night time, setting fire to the thatched roofs and whatnot. So there's a vision of the Palantir of it, so I imagine there were lots of films. There weren't loads. If you type in Lord of the Rings deleted scenes, deleted footage, I think there's like a compilation video of maybe 20 or so minutes. It's either 20 minutes, half hour, or something like that on YouTube you can find. And they've got sort of like scant few shots of it that you can watch through. Tobias says, like, maybe if theatrical versions were tonally close to the book and extended edition was close to Lord of the Rings, I could see it. Just seems like a cash grab. Oh, it was absolutely a cash grab. That's 100% what it was. And I guess that's kind of what J.R.R. Tolkien himself was trying to do. But, you know, thankfully, I think he saw the error in what he was about to do and gave up midway through. I know that I think a few pages of it do exist, don't they, where he was attempting to rewrite The Hobbit in a much more adult tone that would fit better into his Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion continuity, which he abandoned because he says it stopped being The Hobbit. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it does. We get some neat little writings in the appendices and unfinished tales that kind of flesh out the pre-Hobbit stuff a little bit more, and various conversations that Gandalf has with Thorin and Balin in the Blue Mountains and whatnot, and the stuff with Thrain. So I like all of that stuff. That seems like the Lord of the Ringsy part that fleshes all of that out. And then I'm happy with The Hobbit being what it is. And even some of the more childlike elements to it, like the talking purse that the trolls have, which feels more Harry Potter than Lord of the Rings. You can just chalk up to, you know, all, as they say in the film, all good stories deserve embellishment. And maybe this is like Bilbo recounting this story to like a bunch of Hobbit children or something, you know, and he adds like quirky little things in there. So yeah, I'm fine with that. Bath Time says, do you think we'll ever get the cleaned up behind the scenes footage? The Sauron stuff I think would work much better than the cave troll, in spite of it being ridiculous in principle. Oh, you're talking about the end at the Black Gate. I'm glad they didn't have Sauron in his physical form, although technically in the book Sauron does have a physical form. The eye is a metaphorical eye of Sauron, and his sight and his gaze and his grasp on the land and how it's spreading and how it's seeking everywhere. But he does actually have a body, so there are grounds for it. But I do think it would have taken away from the actual drama of that scene, and I think it would have just turned it into a slanging match between Aragorn and Sauron. And I feel like in that moment Aragorn would have become the main character, you know, the ultimate badass king character against the ultimate baddie. And I like how they handled it, because the whole Aragorn stuff is merely a distraction. It's a diversion, so we can keep the main focus on the main drama, which should be Frodo, Sam, Gollum, and the Ring. So I do quite like how he appears as Anatar, though. First, like in his angelic form, and not the ridiculous wig-wearing motherfucker from Rings of Power. I'm glad they didn't go with physical Sauron, but the cave troll is so out of place in the final edit. It is a little bit. I agree with that, and especially because you think this is Sauron's army, and the motherfucker's got one troll. I think it's an Olog High, isn't it? I think if we're getting really technical, like a bigger troll. But yeah, there's just one of them that shows up out of nowhere. Like, you don't see it in the distance marching when all of the orcs are pouring through the Black Gate. Yeah, I feel like if this is Sauron's army we're talking about here, he would have more than one troll. So I get it. I get that it's out of place. I do. But I'd rather have that than a slanging match with Sauron in his armor again. Even the Mouth of Sauron would have been a better choice than a troll for me, especially as we've already killed one. Well, you kind of get that, actually. Do you remember the Return of the King video game? You have the first boss battle of that is where you fight the Mouth of Sauron. I remember playing that game and then watching the film thinking, Like, and even that in the period where, like, waiting for the extended edition to come out, I was like, who's this motherfucker? Is this meant to be the Witch King or something? Like, is this a ring wraith? And then later on, I hadn't read the book at that point, found out it was the Mouth of Sauron when the extended edition came out. The issue I have with that, and if I was doing an edit of the Lord of the Rings films, is that I'd have to, if I have the Mouth of Sauron be decapitated and be killed, you need the severed head on the floor, and you need the horse like out of shot because he just disappears. Like the head, the body just disappears. So I feel like you need the head on the floor, but it's not out of the realm of possibility where maybe the horse could have like ran away and the body could have stayed on the horse. Maybe the edit that I do is probably just trying to keep the Mouth of Sauron alive and that he retreats. Because yeah, again, Aragorn doesn't kill him during a parley, does he? In the book. Tradable Jack says, Merry Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve to you, man. Hopefully you're doing well. And yeah, you're having a great evening. I'm going to have to peace out in a minute. I only intended for this to be like a 45-minute long update. And here I am 2.5 hours and I'm still talking. At this point, we could have watched the first half of my edit of The Hobbit. Which reminds me, let me close that tab down, actually. There we go. Jake says, aren't Ologhai the same size, just capable of moving in daylight? I'm not sure about the daylight thing, actually. I mean, that checks out for the Hobbit films, because it's weird how you have the mountain trolls at the beginning that turn to stone in the daylight, and then you have trolls manning the catapults, and Ologhai as well later on in the movie, and they're all fine in daylight. So I actually don't know about the daylight thing. I thought the Ologhai were just like massive trolls, like insanely big trolls, like the ones pulling Grond and pushing the thing with the rhinos and whatnot. Tobias says, love the behind the scene moment where Bruce Spence realizes how many prosthetics he's going to wear and proclaims, what did I ever do to Peter? Bruce Spence was great as the Mouth of Sauron. Like, what a great actor, especially in the Mad Max films as well. In fact, I think the Mad Max films and Mouth of Sauron are the only films that I've ever seen him in. Is the gyrocopter pilot, isn't he, in Mad Max? He's great. I think he's a brilliant character actor. Beth Time says, personally, I think I've sent the remaining Nazgul stronger and more powerful next to Mordor, and then having to flee to get to Frodo. They understand the end is near. He is in Revenge of the Sith. You're right. He plays the Powan, doesn't he? On Utapau. 10th level, thousands of battle droids. God, how many prosthetics did he need for that as well? Poor guy. I remember seeing the trailer for that and thinking that character was going to be like a major villain in the film. You'd see him like kind of snarling in front of Obi-Wan, and the motherfucker's in it for like a minute. There's no war here unless you brought one with you, or whatever he says. Right, guys, I think I'm going to have to peace out. It is just gone 8:30 for me in the PM. I need to go and do some more piano practice, and I need to do some guitar practice tonight, and I need to get myself in bed tonight because Santa's going to be here in the morning, isn't he? What are we all doing for Christmas? Is it just going to be a quiet one? Are we seeing the folks? Are we seeing family? Is it going to be a quiet one in alone? What's it going to be? We'll round off with that. We'll round off with some good old festive cheer. Why not? It's very rare that you'll get that out of me, but there you go. Oh, Tobias is typing a big message. Oh, unless it's he's in Revenge of the Sith also. Or he's in Revenge of the Sith. Also, I'm about to tell you something else. What is it? I'll just wait a couple of seconds, just get some of the replies in, and then yeah, we'll round off tonight, guys. But me and JX are going to be live tomorrow night, 8 p.m. for the Skeleton Crew, because Disney is still bringing that out on Christmas Day. If that episode is not somewhat Christmas related or holiday special related, I'm going to be highly upset. Bath Time says, everyone gone to bed here, and I'm having a few drinky winkies before I do a drunk show later. Merry Christmas, everyone. If you're doing a live stream, mate, I'll try and jump on if I can. I'll keep an eye out for that. So, yeah, no, thank you so much for jumping on for this stream, man. Keeping the conversation going. You guys are brilliant. Thank you so much. Because I always think when I start these things, oh God, I'm going to be talking to an empty camera, which I can do. I've done that before. It's fine, but it's yeah, that's cool. JX says, our mutual friend is over for the holiday. Got breakfast plans with my brother and his wife. Nice. Excellent stuff, man. Dirty Sanchez says, Austrian Christmas is on the 24th. Everything. Oh, shit. Okay. I didn't realize that. Wow, I'm out of the loop of what goes on in the world. I didn't know Austrian Christmas was on the 24th. Well, very Merry Christmas to you. A very Merry Austrian Christmas to you, Dirty Sanchez. I hope you've had a fantastic one, and I appreciate you joining me tonight of all nights on Christmas for you. So, yeah, no, thank you. Tobias says, about to wrap some presents and watch Muppets from Chris. Let me try that again. I promise I haven't had any drinky winkies, not just yet. About to wrap some presents and watch Muppets Christmas Carol before I go to midnight mass. Pure bliss. That I don't think you can get more Christmassy than that. You're watching the best Christmas movie of all time. Some people may argue Die Hard. You can argue it. Muppets Christmas Carol's where it's at. I hope you're watching the extended version on Disney Plus that's got the song that for some reason was removed. It's like the whole heart and soul of that movie. So hopefully you're watching the extended version. It's the only other extended version other than The Lord of the Rings that's superior. But no, Midnight Mass is beautiful, man. I hope you have a wonderful time. Sounds great. Bath Time says it's called the Man United Agenda, Chris. That's where I'll be around 10. I'm going to take a quick snapshot of that so that I don't forget. Boom. I'll try and get on there, man. Pop another shrimp on the barbie for all the bros in Austria. Love it. Thanks. Have a nice Christmas. We'll probably check in tomorrow. That's great. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Have a great Christmas. And I guess tomorrow have a great Boxing Day. Tradable Jacks. I'm going to head out and finish wrapping some gifts and also watch Home Alone 1 and 2. Yes, because there are only 2 Home Alone movies. Great selection there. My personal favorite, Home Alone 2, because it has a Tim Curry and the traps are like Jigsaw level brutal. The bit with the bricks when he just, yeah. It's good stuff. I really wish that Angels, what was it? Angels with Filthy Souls, is it? And then I can't remember what the second one's called. I wish they were real movies. I know they were made just for that, but they capture that tone of those like old Hollywood movies perfectly. Tobias says, thanks for the recommend. I did not know there was an extended cut. Yeah, so the original version, which, have I got it on video? I have got it on video. I thought it might be on my shelf somewhere there, which it probably isn't. So the original version, when Scrooge's, when they go into the Ghost of Christmas Past and they see the moment where his old girlfriend dumps him, there's a song there called When Love Is Gone, and she sings it, and she's very sad, but she's kind of happy because she says that, look, this isn't going to work out between us. We want different things. I still care for you, but this isn't going to work. And Michael Caine, during the song, sort of steps behind her and he's crying. He's giving it his all, man. And like, I hate to see Michael Caine cry because it makes me cry. He gives it his fucking all, and it's so emotional, that scene. And then it cuts to, then she walks off, and then it cuts to Rizzo crying where Gonzo's consoling him. For some reason, so that's on my video copy from back in the day. They then put it to test audiences and they were like, oh yeah, kids got really restless during the soppy love song, so we decided to cut it. But it makes no sense because it's called When Love Is Gone, and it's sort of the absence of Scrooge's heart, when he didn't care about anything other than money. But then the song's reprised at the very end of the film, which they keep in for some reason, and it's called When Love Is Found, and it's the whole fucking emotional crux of the film. You can watch it on Disney Plus but you have to go on to Muppets Christmas Carol, then you have to go into the extras tab, and then it gives you the option to watch the extended edition there. So don't just click play on it because it will be the cut down version. Go into extras and you'll find it in there. That is the only version to watch. It's the complete fucking Christmas epic that is Muppets Christmas Carol. So please do watch that at some point if you haven't seen it already. Let's see. The same airline that sent Kevin to New York by himself has tonight somehow managed to ground every one of their flights Home Alone Cinematic Universe inbound. Maybe. We'll see. I like to think that the Saw universe is combined with Home Alone. I like to think that Kevin McAllister eventually became John Kramer Jigsaw. I think that checks out. Right, guys, I am going to peace out because I'm a hungry boy. I'm going to go get me some food. I might have a bit of a drinky winky. I've got some wine in, so I might be starting on the Christmas tipple already. It'll help me practice guitar better, right? So, huge thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight and shared some festive cheer towards the end of this stream. That's really kind of you all. And as I say, I'll be back on tomorrow, 8 p.m. Me and JX are going to be doing our weekly review of Skeleton Crew. And yeah, have a great one, guys. Have a very Merry Christmas. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.